Day Special from CBS, presented by Dairy Queen.
This is the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio. I'm Gil Gross. When we talk about the 4th of July and the Revolutionary War, we usually talk about generals, George Washington, of course, and the leading patriots of the time, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Henry, Payne, and so on. The people who don't get mentioned as much as they should, and for that matter, often at all, are the soldiers, even on both sides. For the United States, which barely even existed, there was no real organized draft or recruiting stations at the mall, of course. For Great Britain, at a time when the French, the Spanish, and even the indigenous people of the New World seemed a bigger threat at first, who were the soldiers sent across the sea far from home and loved ones to fight a war where even those loved ones back home might be going, we're fighting against who? Why? Heck, some of us are related to some of these people. To answer those questions, especially about the American revolutionaries, here's Jake Rudderman, who is from the history department at Wake Forest University, one of the few people who has actually looked into the people who fought the war for independence. It's good to have you with us, Jake. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, I want to briefly look at the British, but mainly let's talk about your area of expertise, which are the Americans. Your book, Becoming Young Men of Consequence, is a fascinating book about the people who fought for a country that many in North America did not even really believe yet was a country. Let me start with the title, Becoming Young Men of Consequence. Where does that come from?
I found a quote. There's a British officer who in 1776 is looking at his Continental Army opponents, and he describes them as having joined this rebel force with the hopes of becoming men of some consequence. He thinks it's ridiculous because in his class view, to be an officer is to be a gentleman, and these young men are just pretending. But he actually, I think, has hit on the logic of what military service means, both for young gentlemen, young men of middling or common families, or even really, really poor men. Most of the soldiers in the American Revolution are young. They're not boy soldiers. They're not 14, 15. They're 19. They're 22, 23. And they're at this point in their lives where they're trying to put something together to advance themselves. And I think that helps explain the nature of the Continental Army. They're fighting for political reasons, for family reasons, for economic reasons, and these aren't mutually exclusive.
And I want to get more into that, but just to explain some background, there was a path to adulthood for young Americans, an apprenticeship or some such that would give you a way of making a living. Joining a just created army that wasn't favored by many people to win, which could get you killed in the bargain or be branded a traitor by some. There were still a lot of Tories in America at that time, was not a path that guaranteed in advancement in life.
Well, what's interesting is all of these late teenagers in 1775, 76, 77, they have only known an America, a British America, that is in conflict, their provinces in conflict with Parliament. And the immediate memory of military mobilization before is the 7 Years' War, the French and Indian War, which, especially for New England, sees young men joining provincial regiments, fighting alongside the British, and then most of them coming home with money in their pockets and moving up the social ladder. The example that sticks in my mind is there's this young blacksmith apprentice who runs off and joins a provincial army unit in the 7 Years' War, serves a couple years in the war in Canada, comes home, marries his old master's daughter, opens a tavern, is a increasingly prominent man in his community. And when the American Revolution begins, he's not a private soldier or a non-commissioned officer. He's a captain. He has transformed himself through military service in the prior generation from essentially a nobody into a very prominent leader in his community. And I feel like young men in 1776 or 77, they're looking at that prior generation. That's the example that they have in their mind, particularly in New England. You can use military service to lever yourself up or escape a really bad situation. Or sometimes they don't have a choice and they've been drafted or they've been hired as a substitute for a drafted man. And that's their path into military service.
Well, let's get into each one of these. But yeah, who were these soldiers? Where did they come from? Because the run-up to the War for Independence was in many ways arguments among a bunch of Boston and Philadelphia intellectuals. How does this even get down to, no national newspapers, no radio, no TV, obviously, no internet? How does this get down to the level of young men across the, what was then the country?
Congress has legitimacy, in part because it is growing from the local committees and the new state governments that the Patriot movement is creating in 74, 75, and 76. Congress has power because it has men who have guns. And the way that it puts its army together is it asks each state to raise a certain number of regiments proportional to its size of population and wealth for the cause. And so the Congress tells Massachusetts, we need 15 regiments. The state government in Massachusetts, the Patriot government in Massachusetts, then goes to the various counties and towns and says, we need this many men from your town. The town fathers, the local militia, they get men of military age together and they ask for volunteers. A certain number step forward as volunteers. And then they start drawing names out of a hat as a draft. If you're drafted, you either go or you can hire a substitute. These drafts often actually can act as a form of progressive taxation or even political persecution. You can rig these drafts to make sure that the most wealthy men kind of get picked over and over and over again, and they hire substitutes. Or you think somebody's a Tory, make sure their name gets pulled out of the hat, and you send them to the army, and you punish them that way, or neutralize them that way. Because if they desert, well, they can't come home again. And so you've solved your problem politically. Families will almost perform a young man arbitrage. If a young newlywed brother gets drafted, don't send him. Ask one of his younger brothers to go in his stead. So you don't send the 25-year-old newlywed. You don't send the young householder. You send his 19-year-old, 17-year-old brother. And so this is how families manage the burden of military mobilization. Some men are volunteering because they want the adventure or the cash, or they're politically motivated. Others are going because their father tells them they need to, or the city fathers or the town fathers or the county militia officers lean on them. And so the army becomes younger and also poorer than the society as a whole, but it's poorer because it's younger. These men don't yet have a lot of property, or they're at that point in the arc of their lives where they're starting to put things together.
There are many more stories about the unsung heroes of the American Revolution, and we're going to return with those stories briefly here on the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio.
Introducing the new Swiffer Power Mop, the all-in-one tool that gives you a mop and bucket clean in half the time. The solution's built right in, so no heavy bucket, and the pad has hundreds of scrubbing strips to get deep into grout. Don't mop harder, mop smarter.
Swiffer Power Mop! Swiffer Power Mop! It's better over here.
If you're 55 and up, T-Mobile has an exclusive rate plan just for you. Right now, get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for just $30 a line. That's a 45% savings versus Verizon and AT&T. Plus, you can get one of the latest 5G phones free when you add a line. That's right, a free 5G phone. Experience all this and more on America's largest 5G network. So why wait? At T-Mobile, customers 55 and up can get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for only $30 a line. Just go to T-Mobile.com/choice55 or visit your local store to make the switch.
With AutoPay using debit or bank account plus taxes and fees, 45% off 2 lines versus AT&T Starter and Verizon Welcome. Plan benefits vary. Free phones up to $300 off with 24 monthly bill credits and qualifying new line for well-qualified customers plus tax and $35 device connection charge. Contact us before canceling entire account to continue remaining bill credits, and if you pay off device early. See details at T-Mobile.com.
Hi, I'm Angie Hicks, co-founder of Angie. And one thing I've learned is that you buy a house, but you make it a home. Because with every fix, update, and renovation, it becomes a little more your own. So you need all your jobs done well. For nearly 30 years, Angie has helped millions of homeowners hire skilled pros for the projects that matter. From plumbing to electrical, roof repair to deck upgrades. So leave it to the pros who will get your jobs done well. Hire high-quality certified pros at Angie.com.
Attention, Saginaw. After 25 amazing years at our current location, Binkelman Corporation is moving to a brand new facility at 1646 Champaign Drive North in Saginaw. Since 1946, Binkelman has served agriculture, mining, construction, and asphalt industries. At Binkelman, we offer total solutions from parts procurement, fluid power to production, fabrication, assembly, and installation. We build lasting relationships, solve problems, and have fun doing it. Call Binkelman today at 989-755-6330.
The light is fading, your hands are sore, and the last tool has been put away. Now is the time to feel the satisfaction that comes with a job well done. But when you get your tools from Harbor Freight, something about the job feels a little different. Your wallet. Because we believe that everyone deserves hardworking tools at hardworking prices. And that's what we have here. So, whatever you do it for less at Harbor Freight.
WSGW is your station for Art Lewis. News and views, interviews and opinions. It's free speech on your radio with Art and you. Weekdays 9 to 11 a.m. on WSGW and online WSGW.com.
The Independence Day Special from CBS, presented by Boot Barn.
Now we have more of the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio. I'm Gil Gross, continuing our conversation with Jake Ruderman, whose book, Becoming Young Men of Consequence, is about the soldiers who fought the American Revolution. Some young men joined to escape hard family situations. You even found, right out of Grimm's fairy tales, some evil stepmother stories.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a story where there's a young apprentice who basically convinces a ferryman that he's running away from his wicked stepmother and that he's not a runaway apprentice. There's a story I found. I found a name on a petition that was a striking name. The name was DeWolf, and this father in Connecticut was writing to the army to complain that his teenage son had illegally run away and had illegally joined the army without his consent, and that he wanted his son back. And the son's name was Elijah, so Elijah DeWolf. And this was early in the era of digitization and search, and I realized, well, this isn't John Smith. I should be able to find Elijah DeWolf. And I did. I found his pension application. And so this tiny scrap of paper in which his father complains that his son has absconded illegally. 60 years later, I find the pension application of that veteran, and it tells the same story. This young man had run away from home, had joined the army for 18 months, and at the end of his term of about 18 months of service, He doesn't go home. He joins the Connecticut Coast Guard and serves locally, about 70 miles from where he grew up, but he doesn't go home again. So there was clearly some tension in the relationship between father and son that young man used the war to solve.
Yeah, and I don't want to get ahead of myself because we'll come later to what happens to people after the war. But the pension application thing is fascinating. On Antiques Roadshow, of all places, recently, pension applications showed up for a particular soldier because you had to prove afterwards, yeah, I really did fight, because you had all these disparate divisions and everything, no central record keeping really. And a lot of what we know about these people came from when they made their pension applications and had to prove that they were in the army, where they fought, give some evidence that they were there. And something as bureaucratic sounding as that is where we get a lot of information about the people who fought in the revolution.
These pension applications are a gold mine because they are statements made in open court. They're depositions, and the court recorder is copying down the statement by these men in their 60s, their 70s, their 80s, also their wives or their widows, their kin, members of the community testifying on their behalf. And so they're stories. They're often not stories of the war. It's not information that tells a story of battle in a particular vivid way, but it's a vivid, powerful, and ordinary story of relationships. These documents are now, they've been digitized, and you can go to some place like ancestry.com and you can look up names and you can search for people. There is a citizen transcription project that the National Archive is now running, having folks sign up and just pick a pension. And if you can read the cursive, make your way through it, transcribe it. There's about 80,000 of these. And once we have them transcribed, they'll be easier to search, easier to do big data analysis on. But if you're interested in the most vivid stories and the richest and best told stories of the revolution, there's a book that was published back at the bicentennial, back in the 70s. It's by John Dan. It's called Revolution Remembered. And he tells the story of the American Revolutionary War through the pension applications of men who are at these specific battles, these specific moments, these specific turning points. And it's a great book to both teach from or read and see ordinary people's experiences in the war.
Yeah, getting back to fighting in the war does not go well for a long time. There are very few victories for the Continental Army. What was there to prevent desertions, or was there much of anything? After all, even the most patriotic fighters often had to get home to plant or pick the crops, or their families might starve.
Desertion. What's interesting about desertion from the Continental Army or from the militias in the Revolutionary War is that desertion rates are quite high, but they follow very specific patterns. So men are most likely to desert immediately after enlistment. They basically have changed their mind, or they've taken Congress's money and they're running a scam. There's an instance where there's a man who was executed for having enlisted and deserted like over 7 times in a row. He's clearly just churning, right? He's just scamming recruiting officers. He pays for that with his life. The second place where you see desertion is after casualties, after heavy battles. Primary group cohesion is a real thing, and it exists in the American Revolution as well. Men are fighting for their comrades and for their buddies. And if your friends have died, if your friends have been wounded and are no longer with you, that's demoralizing, and men will leave. And militia come and go, as you said, for agricultural and economic reasons, and even just the sense of like, I've done my part, it's now someone else's turn, and they'll go home.
Well, it seems, and this is amazing when you think about it, and again, this isn't really a country yet. It seems almost everybody does serve at some point, but not all at once, which, if that had happened,
Yes.
You know, the United States of America might have become a country a lot sooner than it did.
Yes. Congress in 1777 proposes a plan for like, I forget the exact number of regiments, but it's essentially like we're going to have 200,000 soldiers. And it is an army that would be so massive that George Washington could drive the British out of occupied New York, like they could invade Canada again. That it was an army that would win American independence immediately. And they never get the numbers that they need. They never ever get close to filling that. But in 1777, that's the largest the Continental Army is. The army is always large enough to necessitate the British attack it. The Continental Army in its various configurations and dispositions is a military force that the British must contend with. The British cannot reestablish sovereign control in North America. They cannot crush this rebellion if the Continental Army is in the field. And the ironic thing is that George Washington, Nathaniel Greene, Gates, these generals can lose battles, but the militia can always then reemerge, reinforce. George Washington loses Philadelphia and has an army ready to fight at Germantown a couple weeks later. Brandywine to Germantown is inconceivable in a European context. But in North America, the Continentals can get beat, but if they stay in the field and if the militia comes out to reinforce them, even temporarily, the British cannot continue to press their advantage, and they have to pull back to fortified positions or occupied cities like New York or Philadelphia or Charleston.
Well, the ironic thing is that this very tactic that, Washington invented, though out of necessity, is used against us in guerrilla warfare. Centuries later, you have the Vietnam War, where the Viet Cong basically lose pretty much every battle, but win the war just because they live there and they can keep attacking and withdrawing, going home for the night or whatever. It's very much how our revolution was fought.
And I don't want to give our listeners a sense that the American Revolution was won by guerrilla fighters. It wasn't. It was won by regular soldiers who had signed contracts to fight for a year or 3 years or the duration of the war. But the reality was the political legitimacy of the movement was supported by about 40% of the population. And then there's another 20, 30% of the population that just wants to be left alone and basically is willing to say, okay, fine, tell me to whom am I paying the taxes? Fine. And the patriots are able to maintain the legitimacy of their cause, and they never push those neutrals or those disaffected in the middle too hard to flip them over to the loyalists, to flip them back to the British. And as a result, the Congress can mobilize and remobilize and year after year draw just enough men out into the field, arm them and equip them with French aid as the war progresses, and to keep an army in the field that the British have to keep fighting. And as a result, the British are never able to regain sovereign control.
We'll find out more about the people who actually fought the American Revolution coming up here on the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio.
At Boot Barn, we believe that the cowboy boot is an American icon. Today's boots are not only rooted in history, but are enhanced with modern technology features for the working cowboy. Ariat boots are built with advanced technology that provides the comfort and support of a high-performance athletic shoe. It still has the functionality and durability of the iconic cowboy boot. And at Boot Barn, we carry over 250,000 pairs of Ariat boots nationwide. Ariat at Boot Barn.
Febreze. As a rideshare driver, I love keeping my car smelling fresh and clean. So when I'm driving, I only trust new Febreze car vent clips, now with 3 times greater scent control, because it's that little touch that sets me apart. I can turn the intensity down for subtle freshness, or I can turn it up for when I want lots of scent. So whether it's set to low, medium, or high, with new Febreze car, I know my car's going to smell amazing, which keeps my driver rating right where it belongs. Picking up, Oscar!
I'm pretty conservative. Many of us are here in rural America. We believe, and I believe, that we have a responsibility to care for not only for our families, but our communities. And this wind project is a great opportunity. It's roads, bridges, schools, things that we need around here. For people who are skeptical, come and see it. It is creating opportunities that we never had before.
Fuel for Thought, presented by the American Clean Power Association. You can host the best backyard barbecue when you find a professional on Angie to make your backyard the best around. Connect with skilled professionals to get all your home projects done well. Inside to outside, repairs to renovations. Get started on the Angie app or visit Angie.com today. You can do this when you Angie that.
Summer's greatest hits are going on now, and Macy's July 4th sale has summer's greatest savings, like 20 to 60% off warm weather styles to refresh your look. Shop amazing limited time specials like swim and cover-ups for your next beach day, 50% off. And sandals from On 34th, Tommy Hilfiger, and more, 30 to 40% off. Going on now at Macy's. Macy's Star Rewards members earn on every purchase, except gift cards, services, and fees. Savings off already reduced prices, exclusions apply.
Hi, this is Mike Avery, and here's what's coming up this week on Outdoor Magazine. First, Chad Stewart of the DNR talks about deer management this fall. Then Tom Campbell of Woods and Water News. In our second hour, Luke Pulaski of the Outdoor Conquest on kayak fishing for muskies. And in our third hour, Jerry Gostinek talks bass fishing in Michigan. Listen Saturday mornings at 6 and Sundays at 9 on WSGW.
It's the Stormmaster Exterior Studios of WSGW. And WSGW is online with Stormmaster Exteriors.
The CBS 4th of July Special, presented by Allstate Insurance.
Now we have more of the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio. I'm Gil Gross, continuing our conversation with Jake Ruderman, whose book, Becoming Young Men of Consequence, is about the soldiers who fought the American Revolution. So here's something that my teachers didn't tell me about in high school or in college, for that matter. What was the Newburgh Conspiracy?
Newburgh Conspiracy is the very end of the war. It's the spring of 1783. And as the British are slowly evacuating out of North America, out of what's now the United States, withdrawing to Nova Scotia, withdrawing to the Caribbean, the young officers of the Continental Army realize that they're never going to get paid and that they have wasted 3, 5, 7 years of their lives. And the Army also knows, and the officers of the Army also know, that politically they are out of favor in the Congress and in the state governments. There's an anti-military spending spirit in the United States in that era. So the officers at Newburgh conspire basically to threaten the Congress that if the Congress doesn't pay them, if the Congress doesn't offer them compensation in the form of long-term pensions and make sure those pensions get paid out, that they're going to basically lay down their arms and let the British do what they want. The soldiers were never going to follow these young officers on that treasonous path. And ultimately, George Washington, as their father, as their father figure, shames them into remembering their oaths and remembering their honor. And it all is all very quickly sort of papered over and forgotten, in part because it is utterly humiliating to the honor of the Army and to the American cause. And so they very quickly forget it.
There's a moment there where Washington loses the room, so to speak. I mean, then he makes some admissions about himself that seems to turn the whole thing around.
He has a letter from a member of the Congress promising the officers that justice will be done to them. And George Washington is in his middle 40s, and he has grown, his eyesight is failing in the way that middle-aged people suffer. And he has to pull out of his pocket a pair of spectacles. And to read a letter wearing spectacles is an admission of age and an admission of infirmity. And he sort of offhandedly quips, you know, you have to pardon me. I have not only gone gray, but also blind in the service of my country. And the young men in the room burst into tears. Overcome with emotion, his allies in the room are able to vote down and very quickly regain control of the meeting and basically send everybody out of the room. But that's also what then these young officers get to choose to remember about Newburgh, is not that they almost betrayed the nation, but that they have this special relationship with George Washington.
The founding fathers were of an age where they, you know, some of them would now be playing video games. James Monroe, who became so important in our history and becomes president, of course, like most Americans fighting this war, was in his teens. I mean, this war was fought by people, you know, to kind of underline this for people these days. These are young men. They
are the age of soldiers universally. I don't believe that there is a universal soldier or a universal experience of soldiering or war fighting. I think it's contingent on culture and where people are in the timeline and where they are in the world. That said, the commonality across human experience is we ask young men, and now young men and young women, of a very specific point in their lives. They are physically mature, they have strong constitutions, they have energy, they're pliable, they're trainable, and they're expendable. And we ask them to sacrifice. And what's different about the American Revolution is that communities, towns, families, counties, states ask for that sacrifice, and they impose that sacrifice with consent of these families, of these communities, of these towns, as they send their young men, as they recruit their young men, as they pay their young men. And some of them don't come back. The ones that do come back live the rest of their lives poorer, less healthy. They have fewer children. They achieve less high political offices. The brutal irony is that a statistical study of pension applications by John Resch shows that the correlation is the longer or more intensely one serves in the Revolutionary War, the harder the rest of his life is. And that is, I think, it is a brutal and sad fact.
Jake Ruderman is in the history department at Wake Forest University. His book is Become Young Men of Consequence. And as I said at the beginning of this, it is an utterly fascinating look at the people who fought to establish this nation. Jake, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Some people just know the best rate for you is a rate based on you with Allstate, not one based on anyone else. So if you drive safely, you could save money. Good to know. Visit allstate.com or call for a quote today.
Look at your cup holder. It's empty, and you're feeling thirsty. Head to a nearby convenience store and fill it with a Pepsi Zero Sugar, Mountain Dew, or Starry. Grab a delicious, refreshing Pepsi for the road.
Find what you love, love what you find. A Total Wine and More. There's so much waiting for you. All kinds of beers and thousands of wines. Guides in the know and prices so low. It just might blow your mind. You're gonna find what you love and love what you find.
Only at Total Wine and More. Drink responsibly. Be 21.
Again, Scent Beat story. Jim was at the laundromat when he heard his ear said, "Maraca, senor," but his nose said, "Hey, freshest scent ever." Following his nose, Jim found a man pouring a bottle of Gain scent beads into the washer. The scent, the freshness. Jim blurted, "Sir, your scent maracas smell amazing." Actually, Jim, most noses call them Gain scent beads. Try Gain scent beads, way fresher than detergent alone.
I want to learn how to cook, but I keep ordering takeout.
Accomplishing goals is hard, but when your goal is to learn a new language, Babbel makes it easy. In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel will help you start having conversations in as little as 3 weeks. Words and phrases you'll actually use. So when someone asks, "How's your French going?" you can say,
Babbel facilite grandement l'apprentissage d'une nouvelle langue.
Now try Babbel for free at Babbel.com. That's Babbel.com. Babbel.com.
Save big money on everything for your next project today at Menards. Transform your home in one weekend with exterior stain and sealer from Dutch Boy. It provides one coat protection on decks, fences, siding, and outdoor furniture, and repels rain in just 4 hours after application. That means quicker results, saving you both time and money. Menards, ranked #1 in customer satisfaction among home improvement retailers, according to J.D. Power. For more information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Save big money at Menards.
Did you know you can get your prescriptions for less at your local pharmacy? You can with GoodRx. It's the free app that can save you money on your medications. Just search for your prescription, choose the pharmacy and the price that works best for you, and then show your GoodRx coupon to your pharmacist at the drop-off counter. GoodRx works at over 70,000 pharmacies, including Walmart, Rite Aid, and Walgreens, and it works whether you have insurance or not. It's easy to save. Next time you drop off your prescription, check GoodRx. To start saving today, go to GoodRx.com. GoodRx is not insurance.
Hi, welcome to Staples. Hi, my son's teacher emailed his back to school list. He needs crayons and a comp book for every subject.
Okay, no problem. With Staples Hot Deals, you'll find super low prices on hundreds of items for back to school.
Oh, now they're saying he needs folders and glue.
You got it.
And markers?
Of course.
Oh, geez.
Can we get a card, please?
Save big on back to school with Staples Hot Deals. Right now, 24-pack Crayola crayons and comp books are only 50 cents each at Staples. Ends 8/24, in-store only, limit 30.
Incoming transmission from RocketGrabPlus.com.
We have a fantastic deal for you this week at RocketGrabPlus.com. Get the $219 Ogama County Fair Ultimate Package for only $109.50. This package includes 2 concert tickets, 4 grandstand tickets, and 4 weekly passes, each with a home-cooked dinner, drink, and dessert. Happening August 13th through the 17th in West Branch. Don't miss the Ogama County Fair or this amazing deal from RocketGrabPlus.com.
Transmission terminated.
WSGW is your station for Coast to Coast with George Norrie. Investigating all things, especially the curious and unexplained. Overnights 1 to 5 a.m. on WSGW and online WSGW.com.
The CBS 4th of July Special, presented by Primatene Mist.
We have more now of the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio. I'm Gil Gross. It is time to talk about a hero of the Revolution who, as with many of the people we've looked at over the years, was once better known to Americans before the teaching of history pre-college seemed to, somehow fall apart. He is Nathaniel Greene, who Terry Galway calls Washington's general in a book of that same name. Galway is a noted historian and journalist whose latest book is about one of my personal favorite historical figures, one-time New York City Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia. We'll save him for another day. But let's introduce General Greene. First, let's introduce Terry. Terry, how are you?
I'm just great. It's great to be here, Gil.
You know, we talk about this general, this hero of the Revolution. He's a Quaker, grows up in a Quaker family, generally not the sort to go to war.
Oh, it's extraordinary. His youthful rebellion is something, that we would associate with the 1950s or the 1960s. His family insisted that there was no reason to learn anything. There was no reason to learn how to read, for example, except maybe to read the Bible. And of course, they were pacifists. And growing up, Greene rebelled from his family very early on by insisting to his father that he at least learn to some math so he could keep accounts. But he sort of, secretly taught himself to read, and then had books brought into him surreptitiously. Some youths maybe would have brought in beer. He brought in books and educated himself in an astonishing way. And it, of course, comes to fruition when he emerges as the great strategist of the Continental Army, this uneducated Quaker from Rhode Island becomes a brilliant tactician. Somebody like Lord Cornwallis, one of the great generals in British history, said basically, you can't beat him.
Now, some of his grievance with the British as it starts out is personal after a ship is confiscated by Britain.
In the lead up to the American Revolution, the British, of course, as we know, are taxing the colonists in ways they had not before. And they're doing it quite aggressively. They're doing things like seizing merchant ships, which is what they do to Greene and his company. They seize his ship. And that sort of is a political awakening. Before this, there isn't much indication that Nathaniel Greene is going to become a rebel against the crown. I mean, he was a rebel against his family, which maybe was an indication. But this is sort of his political awareness is, okay, this occupying power is not just taxing us in ways that never happened before, but they're seizing our ships.
He organizes a state militia, and I guess this is truly ironic considering his later career. He is not chosen to lead it as an officer because he had a limp.
Literally, he's told, how can we have you marching at the head of our column if you have a limp? And again, ironically, maybe he wasn't good enough for the Kentish Guards, but he certainly was good enough for George Washington.
When Washington is put in charge of the Continental Army, he chooses Greene to be one of his generals. Now, how does Washington, who comes up from Virginia, know about this Rhode Island guy in the first place?
Good question. I mean, it is a mystery about how Greene worked his way up to that point. In fact, we're still not sure why, after being rejected by the Kentish Guards, when war begins to break out, when conflict begins to break out, and there's Rhode Island says, well, we're going to send an army to Boston. Lo and behold, Nathaniel Greene is the commander-in-chief of the Rhode Island Army. So, forget the Kentish Guards. He's now the guy in charge of the Rhode Island Army. So he's already in a position of authority. And I do think that Washington was well aware of regional differences. So here he is, as you point out, a Virginian taking over an army in Boston that is mostly staffed by New Englanders. So I think it actually was quite political and savvy of Washington to say, these people probably think I talk funny, right? And boy, they do. So maybe it would be smart of me to have some local knowledge and a local commander by my side. And I think that might explain the prominence of the sudden prominence of Nathaniel Greene in Washington's confidence.
Now, it works out, but there are many moments during the war when all might have been lost in the cause for independence. One of the earliest, of course, most infamous was New York City. The British had just given the Americans a solid thumping in Brooklyn, and Washington at first wants to defend Manhattan, and then when he realizes it can't really be defended with what he's got, he wants to burn it to the ground so the British can't have it. And Greene was really instrumental in convincing him, that would be a mistake.
That's right, yes. But then later on, he gives some bad advice, Greene does, where he tells Washington, most of the Continental Army has now crossed the Hudson River into New Jersey. And Greene says, Fort Washington, we probably should stay there. We've got 3,000 people there, 3,000 soldiers. Let's keep them there because they'll help defend us against any sort of counterattacks. That was a disaster. The British attacked Fort Washington and 3,000 men were killed or taken prisoner. And that was the result of Greene's advice. But to Washington's credit, he never blamed Nathaniel Greene, even though Washington thought, no, we should evacuate this place. And Greene was the one who said, no, I can defend it. Well, he couldn't. And in a war of this size, the loss of 3,000 soldiers at such a moment was a catastrophe. But again, I think it spurred on Greene to sort of not make bad decisions the rest of the way. But it also speaks well of Washington's character that he never blamed it all on Greene, which he certainly could have.
We lose New York. We lose Philadelphia. The war is definitely going very badly. Greene is with Washington at Valley Forge, and there is a cabal that wants Washington gone and replaced by Horatio Gates. and Greene defends Washington.
Yes. So that's sort of it's a great that you bring that up, because I think to a lot of listeners, they may have just done a double take. But wait a minute, you mean there were people in the United States who wanted to get rid of George Washington, the guy on Mount Rushmore? Yes, because as you point out, the war was really going poorly. The only thing that the Continental Army could sort of hang its hat on was the Battle of Saratoga, which was led by Horatio Gates. So there was a faction in Congress which was saying, Washington just isn't getting it done. Look what Gates did up in Saratoga. He defeated this large British army that was coming down from Canada. Of course, the other hero of the Battle of Saratoga was Benedict Arnold. So there was, during Valley Forge, as you said, there was a real movement surreptitiously and actually even openly to have Washington demoted and have Horatio Gates put in his place. And Greene was having none of that and wrote his friends in Congress and said, this would be an outrage. And obviously it did not happen.
Yet the more you study history, the more you find out that the personalities and the people and what shapes them and relationships are a very important part of why history happens and happens the way it does.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been around enough academics. I mean, I guess I technically am an academic myself with a PhD, but I was also mostly a journalist for most of my career. And I'm more than a little bewildered when I see this rejection in academic history and even in classrooms of the idea of the great man approach to history. Now, yes, I understand there are great women as well. So there's that, right? But the fact is, individuals make history. Martin Luther King Jr. made history. Can we imagine the civil rights movement without Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? I don't think so.
We have more on Washington's favorite general, Nathaniel Greene, coming up on the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio.
Do you hear that? Asthma triggers are everywhere, from dust mites, pet dander, and pollen, to smog and smoke. An asthma attack can strike anywhere, anytime. Be prepared with quick-acting Primatene Mist. Clinically proven to open airways quickly. It's the #1 FDA-approved asthma inhaler available over the counter. Primatene Mist. Breathe easy again. Use as directed.
Presenting a Gain Flings love story. Dear love of my life, we were on the 12B bus this morning when I caught a whiff. A scent so fresh, so life-changing, I had to find its source. Alas, I didn't know if you were the woman in the pink freshly washed cardigan or the retired mailman next to me, but I knew one of you was my soulmate. Ah, the scent of Gain Flings. Try Gain Flings with OxyBoost and Febreze.
We're proud to make Pioneer Sugar for you and your family. Proud to be found in your kitchen, the heart of your home. And it doesn't really matter what you make with Pioneer Sugar, whether it's with our granulated white, light brown, or soft confectioners. It's the memories you'll make using it that will matter the most. Pioneer Sugar, pure and all natural, made from sugar beets grown right here. What could be sweeter than that?
Did you know Washington wants to pick your next car for you? The EPA's new de facto car ban will make Washington your backseat driver. It will ban 2 out of every 3 new gas-powered vehicles by 2032. 2 out of 3. That could be your next car or truck. Protect your right to drive your way. Say no to the EPA's vehicle ban. Take action at EnergyCitizens.org. Paid for by the American Petroleum Institute.
Whatever happened to Tony Horton, the guy who created the revolutionary P90X?
2017, I was knocked down. A very rare type of shingles that went straight into my brain. My body was completely wasting away. I started researching everything related to building my muscle back again. That's when I learned about the potential of HMB plus vitamin D3 and what they can do when it comes to helping build new muscle.
So Tony developed high-impact protein by Power Life.
Just add 1 scoop of high-impact protein to a glass of water or your morning smoothie and enjoy the effects of that boss molecule and factory worker combination. Free reshaping your body each and every day. More energy, burn more fat, and probably drop a few pounds along the way.
High Impact Protein by Power Life is a tasty once-a-day powder that comes in either whey or plant protein. Go to mypowerlife.com and use code PORTON to save 30%. Tony even offers a 90-day guarantee. Go to mypowerlife.com or text PORTON to 511-511. Text PORTON to 511-511 today. All individuals are unique. Your results can and will vary. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Tax fees may apply.
WSGW is your station for your morning team. News, weather, sports, entertainment, and information. Charlie, Mike, Jonathan, and you from 5:30 to 9 on WSGW and online WSGW.com.
The Independence Day Special from CBS, presented by New Nordic.
Now we have more of the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio. I'm Gil Gross, and I'm talking with Terry Galway, who wrote Washington's General about how Nathaniel Greene helped America win the Revolution. Now, of course, Washington goes on to be president. Greene, who at the end of the war is deep in debt, moves south because he's offered rewards and things, such as one of the things he takes, and maybe this is one of the reasons why he's not taught about in schools, takes a slave plantation that he's offered as a reward for helping to win the revolution. That leads to some of his later obscurity and the fact he just dies young, so he doesn't become one of the founding fathers and military heroes who, later becomes president or rises to Secretary of State or importance in Congress or anything like that.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that had Greene lived, and he was 43 when he died in 1786, so he actually died before, the Constitutional Convention. There's no doubt that he would have been Secretary of War. And Henry Knox was a perfectly good Secretary of War for George Washington and was a logical choice too. I'm not denigrating him, but I think most historians of this period would say that Greene would have been the country's first Secretary of War, or as we call him today, Secretary of Defense, rather than Henry Knox. But you're right. Part of as Greene's biographer, I do have to say I was disappointed to learn that later in life he went against Quaker dogma again by becoming a slave owner and he's taking advantage of the plantations that the southern states are giving him in gratitude for his service, but he is also rejecting, if you will, Quaker dogma by agreeing to own slaves, in which he did. So for that reason, maybe out of favor, although, George Washington was a slave owner too, I think it's his lack of a post-war career is really what hurt his memory. But having said that, he is remembered in many places in the South. He is remembered in Brooklyn in a neighborhood called Fort Greene, named after Nathaniel Greene. So in some ways, his memory is basically hiding in plain sight.
In our later wars, some American generals have been stymied by the very tactics that Nathaniel Greene used to beat Cornwallis and win the war. Tactics that, I guess we can say even though it was Greene, invented. And it's always been kind of puzzling, instead of, people out of West Point going, oh yeah, okay, we know that. We're not going to fall for that because Nathaniel Greene invented that, so we know what that is.
Yes, I mean, to the Vietnamese, we were the British, right? We come in with our overwhelming firepower, our professionally trained soldiers. Of course, during Vietnam, a lot of them were conscripts, a lot of them were draftees. But nevertheless, coming in with hundreds of thousands of troops, heavily armored, all of the best, technology best war technology that money can buy. And we are, let's face it, we were outmaneuvered and outwitted by the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong, who were using the tactics of Nathaniel Greene.
The book is Washington's General. It's by Terry Galway. Terry, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Gil.
Stay right here for more of the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio.
Broadcasting from the Stormmaster Exterior Studios, WSGW, Saginaw, Bay City, Midland, WSGW FM, Carlton.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
I'm Vicki Barker.
I learned from my father, when you get knocked down, just get back up.
President Biden once again insisting he won't step down despite last week's faltering debate performance, telling civic media in Wisconsin.
We're going to win this election. We're going to just beat Donald Trump like we did in 2020. We're going to beat him again. But we need all of you to get this done, all of you.
Democratic governors came out of a White House meeting backing Mr. Biden, but as CBS's Scott McFarland reports, there's growing disquiet among Democrats in Congress.
A second U.S. House Democrat, Arizona progressive Raul Grijalva, urged the president to withdraw Wednesday, saying what he needs to do is shoulder the responsibility for keeping that seat. And part of that responsibility is to get out of the race.
Storm Beryl, now a Category 3 hurricane, which may or may not chart a path to the southern U.S.
There is still a fair amount of uncertainty beyond the weekend with where Beryl exactly goes and whether or not it makes landfall in northeast Mexico or South Texas.
National Weather Service meteorologist Jacob Asherman. It's Election Day in Britain, and voters are widely projected to end 14 years of rule by the Conservatives, the party of Margaret Thatcher and Boris Johnson.
The Conservatives have got to go.
I think it's time for a change.
I've been a Labour voter basically since I could vote. I'm feeling excited.
She's right to be. Polls suggest the left-leaning opposition Labour Party could win by a record margin. CBS's MTS Tyab has more.
Sir Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, looks set to win a landslide, but not because he's popular or has run a great campaign.
Tea, coffee.
I don't think there's enthusiasm for Keir Starmer, but he's going to win a huge majority because people are sick and tired of having the Conservatives in power.
And Labour isn't just campaigning on change, but also to end what they call the years of chaos at the hands of the Conservative government.
Millions of Americans will watch fireworks display in their local communities tonight. But hundreds of people in Western New York State got their display one day early. Kinesis Lake staging its annual July 3rd fireworks. Americans reaching into their wallets this Independence Day.
Nearly 90% of consumers plan to celebrate the 4th of July and will spend an average of $90 on food items. That's according to the National Retail Federation, which has been tracking such information since 2003. Nearly a third of those surveyed plan to buy at least one patriotic item.
CBS's Jim Krasula reporting, and Americans will drink $1 billion worth of beer today, according to Wallet Hub. This is CBS News.
Sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Get renter's insurance to protect the things that make your place a home, including coverage for theft or damage. Visit Progressive.com.
Making your summer travel plans? Just need a getaway? With extra flights added to Detroit and Chicago, MBS International Airport can connect you with your perfect summer getaway. Whether your destination is international or domestic, visit mbsairport.org, where you are now able to find flights, travel deals, packages, and even book your car and hotel all in one convenient place. MBS International Airport. Save time and money when you fly from nearby.
You can host the best backyard barbecue. You find a professional on Angie to make your backyard the best around. Connect with skilled professionals to get all your home projects done well. Inside to outside, repairs to renovations. Get started on the Angie app or visit Angie.com today. You can do this when you Angie that.
I'm Paul Young, candidate for Congress, and I approve this message.
Build the wall. Deport illegals. Put America first. That's Paul Young's plan. The conservative choice for Congress. Pro-Trump and proud of it. Paul Young will secure our border and bring back Michigan jobs. Young served in President Trump's administration, enforcing immigration law to keep illegals out. That's why Young's been with Trump since 2016 and never wavered. But Mary Draves, she serves Democrats. Gretchen Whitmer handpicked Draves to her climate council to push tax hikes and mandates on Michiganders. It's no wonder why Draves backed Biden's Green New Deal and opposed Trump's policies to protect American workers. Draves even donated to Trump-hating Democrats who tried to impeach him. We can't trust Mary Draves to stand with Trump, and Michigan can't afford to send her to Congress. Paid for by Paul Young for Congress.
Here's your WSGW weatherology forecast.
We'll see a few spotty rain showers possible late today. Otherwise, a blend of clouds and sunshine develops with a high in the upper 80s. Winds out of the west around 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tonight, mostly cloudy and a low near 67. By Friday, a chance for showers and thunderstorms, cloudy high of 82 degrees. Then by Saturday, mostly cloudy, a high of 77. Sunday, sunshine, a high of 83 degrees. Then by Monday, a chance for rain showers here late. Partial sunshine develops, a high around 86. Tuesday, chance for showers and storms, high of 81. I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki with the WSGW Weatherology Forecast.
Currently, it's 78.
Independence Day 2024 on WSGW. It's 10:06. WSGW continues to celebrate Independence Day with you. Hour 2 of the CBS Independence Day Special.
The Independence Day Special from CBS, presented by Navage.
This is the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio. I'm Gil Gross. There are the revolutionary heroes that you know, but there are many that you do not. Nancy Rubin Stewart has written about one of them, well known in her lifetime, well, in a way, which we'll explain, not so much now, but let's see what we can do to change that. Stewart's book about this is The Muse of the Revolution, the secret pen of Mercy Otis Warren and the founding of a nation. And Nancy, let's talk about Mercy. When we think of the Muse of the Revolution as the title of your book, we might usually think of somebody like Tom Paine, whose writings were so influential among the populace and moving Americans, from just trying to find an accommodation with Great Britain to overthrowing it altogether. Where does Mercy Otis Warren fit in?
Well, it's interesting. Mercy Otis Warren certainly did write a great deal about the revolution, but women weren't supposed to even think about politics, let alone write about them. She was very unusual, and she wrote under pseudonyms. Actually, a lot of her work was copied and plagiarized, but initially she wrote a sort of scathing plays. They're like Saturday Night Live plays against the British that really stoked the flames of the revolution in Boston in particular. Later on, she wrote important treatises that have to do with objections that we needed a Bill of Rights for the Constitution. And later she wrote a history. By the way, that was it. John Adams kept after her for decades to please write this history. Her husband was part of the revolution, and so, of course, was she. She has been called also the conscience of the revolution, but my publisher and I decided she was the muse because her writing at that time, which was very fashionable and she was highly educated, was neoclassical writing. So, in that sense, it was laudable. Let me just put it that way.
Kind of skipping ahead in time here, I want to get back to her roots, but you mentioned that history she writes is an amazing collection of stories because she knew all these people. I mean, she knew George Washington, she knew Martha Washington, she knew John and Abigail Adams. You talk about how John Adams moved her to write this history of the revolution, really the first real history we have of it. But when it came out, Adams was not too happy with her.
No, he was not. From the time she was, still in her 30s and early 40s, and she was a close friend of the Adams. She actually hosted meetings of the Sons of Liberty in Plymouth, Massachusetts, away from Boston, so the British wouldn't know about it. Because she was so involved in the early days of the revolution, and she was so erudite, very unusual for a woman in those days, and her husband was prominent in the early days of the revolution. Her husband, James Warren, he felt she would be perfect to write this history. She was an eyewitness to so much. There are several accounts in this book about how they're worried when the British not only have occupied Boston, but they're coming south of Boston and nearby the British soldiers, and they want to be quartered, and things they're doing that were pretty terrible during the revolution. So, and of course her sons, she's worried for her 5 sons, and she's worried for her husband, and there are lots of things that happened. She's involved in boycotts, against the British and strikes for tea and so on. So she had a lot of eyewitness and personal experience. But John Adams, when he went to Philadelphia for the, sort of rump congresses, if you will, her husband, James, was in Watertown. He became head of the provincial council. And it was only Mercy, and she would go there. She would go to Watertown by herself, by the way, on a chaise chair. It was only John didn't know what was going on in Massachusetts, and he would write. And so Mercy was the only one. Everyone was frantic with soldiers and so on, trying to deal with the revolution in the early days. It was Mercy who would write to him at Congress and say, what's going on? And she would explain it. So it was at that time, this is 1775, 76, he'd say, look, you've got to keep records. She didn't just stop there. She also scoured newspapers, very difficult to do because mail wasn't so great around the country. She had Abigail give her whatever information Abigail had. She interviewed people. So she worked on this for, 35 years. And Adams was very supportive to a point. Well, the book was not published until 1805. She did not hear from him after she sent him a copy. She sent it to many other people, including President Jefferson. But when she sent it to him, didn't hear from him for 2 years. And then he wrote to her and he said he'd read her history and he had, in the spirit of friendship, he had a few corrections to make in her history. And his corrections went on for 20 letters.
Wow.
Page by page. And each, basically, he wanted to be made more of a big deal than he was in the revolution. And of course, he did live in France. He did live well in other places in England, so on. Because he was a representative of the new United States, they lived in nice homes and so on. Well, this is not what the Patriots wanted. The Patriots wanted simplicity and thrift and honesty. They didn't want any monarchical trappings. So there's a lot of tension between the Adams much later in life and the Warrens. The other histories that were published by 1805, Mercy's, of course, wasn't published till 1805, but the other histories that were already written by men were among them John Marshall, David Ramsay, his is probably the best known, and Samuel F. Wilson.
So how was her history of the revolution received compared to the ones by men?
That's a good question. Not well. It got very few reviews, and she had to wait a long time. And President Jefferson had copies of her history and even gave some to members of his cabinet. Her publication was almost completely ignored, and there finally was one obscure review. I think it came out of Western Massachusetts, the conclusion being that it had the, quote, scent of a woman, end quote.
And in fairness to that quote, when you read it today, the great thing about it is because she personally knew all these people, you get a real feel for the people. As an academic history of, well, this is what happened in the revolution, maybe not so much.
Yes. Well, that, of course, everyone had a say in it. I think the fact that it had her name on it was the first thing that they immediately dismissed it because it was a woman.
Exactly.
Unheard of.
Yeah, there is a lot. And one of the things that Adams remarks at the time, and Adams had mentored Mercy. I mean, this was a close friendship. When the history came out that she wrote, Adams replied, a seemingly un-Adams remark, history is not the province of the ladies.
That is true, but she also wrote back to him, and she reminded him that, a true historian will basically, I'm going to paraphrase it, tell the truth no matter who or what. And she quoted him from a quote that he gave her back in 1775 or 76. So this terrible clash went on. And finally, she threw up her hands and she said, if you wanted, this whole tome about you, this is not about you, just, it's about the revolution. If you wanted a panegyric, she used that word. She said, write your own history.
Now, the funny thing is, they make up in a very sweet way if you consider defacing a library book a very sweet way.
Well, 5 years go by after this. 16 letters, by the way. 16 letters. She only writes 6. He writes 10. They're each 20 pages long. In the middle of the summer, you can imagine, with a quill pen. And he goes on, and she finally just gives up. And she says she's not going to have anything to do with him until he apologizes. And this is just outrageous. So 5 years go by, silence. And of course, that puts a terrible strain on her relationship with Abigail. But when Nabby dies, their daughter, the Adams daughter, then she, of course, that she had known and actually brought up Nabby partially, there's a bit of a reconciliation at that point. And then a little bit later, now Mercy's in her mid 80s. they start to exchange, nostalgic memories and so on. And the very end of her life, and they're having this correspondence. They don't see each other. She writes to him and she said, "Can you do me one favor?" And he said, "Yes." And she said, "Could you go into the Boston Athenaeum and could you please get her very important play called The Group, which was against Hutchison and other people. And could you please correct it? Because, of course, it had been plagiarized." And Adams rides on his horse. He goes into Boston in August. And if you go to the Boston Athenaeum today, you will see on The Group, which is her play, that he has scrawled on it, "This play was written by Mercy Otis Warren, signed President John Adams."
We have more yet on the woman who inspired Americans to fight for independence, and that's coming up here on the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio.
Concerned about age-related macular degeneration, or AMD? If you're over 50, then you should be. AMD impacts as many as 1 in 10 Americans over 50, severely impacting your vision and robbing you of your ability to drive, read, and enjoy the vibrant beauty of life. Now, protecting your eyes is easier thanks to New Nordic's Blueberry Eye Supplements. Specifically formulated to improve eye health, New Nordic's Blueberry Eye Supplements not only protect your eyes, but help improve night vision, as well as helping to relieve eye fatigue caused by digital devices. Only New Nordic uses wild Swedish blueberries because of their superior concentration of color pigments, which are vital to eye function and health. New Nordic's Blueberry Eye Supplements are Scandinavia's #1 selling natural eye formula. But now you can find them at Amazon.com or NewNordicUSA.com. Enjoy healthy vision with New Nordic's Blueberry Eye Supplements. Available now at Amazon.com or NewNordicUSA.com.
At Boot Barn, we believe that the cowboy boot is an American icon. Today's boots are not only rooted in history, but are enhanced with modern technology features for the working cowboy. Ariat boots are built with advanced technology that provides the comfort and support of a high-performance athletic shoe, yet still has the functionality and durability of the iconic cowboy boot. And at Boot Barn, we carry over 250,000 pairs of Ariat boots nationwide. Ariat at Boot Barn.
Did you know your skin is the largest organ of your body?
Huh?
That's why you should shower with Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash instead of plain old bar soap. Love your skin by super hydrating it with vitamin B3 and glorious notes of vanilla and shea. Did you know that my super hydrated skin is the second largest organ of my body? The first is my heart. Old Spice. Men have skin too. Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash. 24/7 renewing moisture. With daily use.
Hello, I'm Shep.
And I'm Mark.
And we're the friendly board-certified entomologists from Rose Pest Solutions.
Hey, Shep, I've got a riddle for you.
Hit me.
Why don't anteaters get sick?
I don't know.
Because they're filled with antibodies.
You know, Mark, there are thousands of ant species that can run amok in your home.
To be effective, you've got to keep them straight.
The pros from Rose can correctly identify the ant and solve the problem.
Protect your health and home. Call 800-966-ROSE. Rose will get the best of your best.
The smarter way to clean your floors. It's time to make the swap. Swiffer Power Mop.
Introducing the new Swiffer Power Mop, the all-in-one tool that gives you a mop and bucket clean in half the time. The solution's built right in, so no heavy bucket, and the pad has hundreds of scrubbing strips to get deep into grout. Don't mop harder, mop smarter.
Swiffer Power Mop. Swiffer Power Mop.
WSGW is your station for Art Lewis. News and views, interviews and opinions. It's free speech on your radio with Art and You. Weekdays 9 to 11 a.m. on WSGW and online WSGW.com.
The Independence Day Special from CBS, presented by Babbel.
This is the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio. I'm Gil Gross, and we're talking with Nancy Rubin Stewart about her book, The Muse of the Revolution, The Secret Pen of Mercy Otis Warren and the Founding of a Nation. Now, the important part of this, and the reason why her works were easily plagiarized by other people and all, is as a woman who might not be taken seriously at that time for her writings, she did not write under her own name. She wrote under a pseudonym. So one of the reasons why a lot of us were not brought up in our history classes knowing anything at all about Mercy Otis Warren, is that a lot of her writings, a lot of her most influential writings, and especially the writings at the time of the Revolution, were written under a pseudonym.
Well, actually, Gil, I'm not even sure that they were written under a pseudonym, but they were printed, by the way, many of them by John Adams. Mercy's plays were widely produced, and parts of them, at least, were published in the Boston Gazette and the Massachusetts Spy, and of course, parts of them were broken up into pamphlets. There was no copyright law in those days, so people put their name all over them. There are all these different names that are, if you look at some of that, that are attributed. Now, she did write. Finally, I should say that her protest against the Constitution, her plea for a Bill of Rights, was written just obliquely by a Colombian patriot. But just a few years later, in 1792, she did write. She did publish some of her early poetry and some of her later plays. And she did finally, because finally by then women were beginning to be able to put their names on things. Not until then. She did write in her own name.
I don't want to go quickly by what you said about not being happy with the original Constitution and pushing for a Bill of Rights, because this is an important thing that she does. She looks at the original Constitution that does not have a Bill of Rights. That's why they're the first 10 amendments. And she is not happy and lets everybody know it. And again, because of the people she knew, she could be fairly influential there.
Yes, and so she has written a very, very interesting paper, which again is not even credited to her until so much later. But she talks about the importance of states' rights. Her criticisms, her suggestions are then picked up by the Massachusetts legislature, even though they ratify the Constitution, and they are then passed on to the people who finally get credit for framing the Bill of Rights, Madison and so on.
Now, you mentioned that the Sons of Liberty met at her house, and we can't bypass the danger that this was. This was a revolution against the British, a powerful military force, for this idea of a country that isn't really yet a country. And it's clear by her letters, she's clearly afraid of the possible blowback she might get. And what happens to her brother James is kind of important here.
Yes, it is. And that's how she becomes, and I don't talk about that, but that's how she becomes politically involved. Before that, she's writing nature poetry. Now, her brother James is really the spark for the American Revolution. It's kind of his nickname. And he was a revolutionary way back in 1762. He objected to the writs of assistance. He actually had a whole lawsuit. He was an attorney against Hutchison and on some of the other people who were the authorities, representatives of the British Crown in Massachusetts. And he then went on to, of course, be very close to Sam Adams and John Adams and many other of the early sons of revolution. But he was so outspoken, he kept writing these treatises in the newspapers, that finally in 1769, the British, he went to a coffee house, as they all did, and the British brutalized him. They beat him so badly. John Adams writes about that and says, his forehead was so badly battered, you could lay a finger in the wounds. Well, Jemmy, that's her brother's name, never recovers his sanity. And that leaves Mercy, who was very devoted to him, to kind of pick up the correspondence he had with people who were Whigs in Parliament and try to get some traction for the British to desist all of these oppressive acts. And that's how she begins to become involved politically. And soon after that, there's, of course, the Boston Tea Party. And it's then that John Adams says to her, look, you've got to write about this. And she says, well, and it's just typical of her. I'm a woman and, something's dangerous and you've got to write about it. And finally she does. She writes a very, in those days, funny poem about the nymphs who are now looking at Boston Harbor. And what are they finding in there? They're finding souchong and oolong tea in the water. So, this is how she begins, but she's timid to do that in the beginning. And of course, she's timid when she writes her plays, even the most powerful one, The Group. which is right before the American Revolution, just comes out a month before. Adams rushes it into print. She's really hesitant to have it published because she knows it's so incendiary.
She also is aware, as some Americans may not have been yet, of the physical danger here, not only by what happened to her brother being beaten into senselessness by the British, but she ends up right in the middle of Lexington and Concord, in part because she's just trying to get some time alone with her husband.
Yes, she does. And he's terrified when Lexington and Concord, the bloodshed there, the rump assembly, if you will, in Massachusetts disbands, and he comes home. But what do? They ride off to Rhode Island to warn people there that this revolution is happening. We didn't have cell phones in those days, so just as dangerous. And then they look for a place where she can hide with her sons because there may be repercussions. There are British spies everywhere.
You mentioned at the beginning when we first started talking about her plays, because Tom Paine does these very direct pamphlets and all. She, besides doing some of that herself, she does these. You mentioned these plays that were kind of like Saturday Night Live. They're interesting because they wouldn't. There's such classical writing it wouldn't really work to be revived on the stage today, except maybe as a curiosity. And yet, when you talk about Saturday Night Live, the satire and the names she uses and everything seem very, very modern.
Oh, yes, she does a lot of things. She has names like Krusty Crowbar, but there are other names that she gives for people that are, just lambast them and are cruel, but right on.
Yeah, she's generally very prim when you read her writings, except when something really fires her up. There are questions with people who are kind of holding back, such as, and this is a quote, "Why are you piddling?"
Yes, yeah, she does. She's she becomes known as the formidable Mrs. Warren, and everybody knew when she wrote on her comments on the Constitution and disguised it as the Columbian Patriot that this was written by the formidable Mrs. Warren, because she does not mince words.
Well, let's mention that because she is Mrs. Warren. So there's a Mr. Warren, James Warren, her husband. And at that time in history, many men would have said, stay at home, do the cooking. Was he all in on her activities? Because that would be rare for the time.
That's the amazing thing about her life. I mean, you have to understand, and I'm sure you do, that in those days, women had all they could do to keep the family going. I mean, they think about the work that the colonial woman had to do, just laundry, hot water, fires, and a lot of women got burned in their fires for cooking, child rearing and bearing, cleaning. I mean, these things we don't think about today. You press a button or you have a machine or whatever. And all of that took time. So women's job and all the literature, the religious literature, the political literature, women's place was in the home. There was no question about it. And yes, she was a wealthy woman. She did have servants, and possibly one of them was a slave from childhood. I don't know. But still, it took a huge amount of time and energy. Women were not supposed to be. There were even a lot of references that have been made in religious and in political statements that an educated woman was a curse. What good was an education? It had nothing to do with keeping the home and the hearth together, with being a wife and a childbearer. Absolutely nothing. In fact, it could ruin her. It could make her into sort of a man. This was the feeling. And so women were not, as I said in the beginning, are not supposed to write about, not supposed to think about, not supposed to talk about politics. Of course, she and Abigail did, because their husbands were so involved, and they, like everyone else, were involved. And the women were involved too. The women went on boycotts. They created homespun instead of ordering clothes from Europe. They found local teas because they wouldn't drink the English tea. They were involved in protests. So women were active in groups like that, sewing circles. But in terms of speaking out, other than that, absolutely not, let alone writing about it, and let alone writing about it in prominent places.
Bringing someone back from obscurity in history like this to her importance in the revolution is a wonderful feat. Nancy Rubin Stewart has written The Muse of the Revolution, the secret pen of Mercy Otis Warren and the founding of a nation. Nancy, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You're listening to the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio.
Sneezing, coughing, stuffy nose, runny nose, postnasal drip, interrupted sleeping. I was groggy at the end of the day.
Allergies and sinus congestion were making Jana miserable. Then, a friend recommended Navage. Navage provides immediate drug-free congestion relief, flushing your nasal passages with refreshing saline and sucking out mucus, germs, and other airborne irritants. Navage helps you breathe easier, sleep better, and feel your best right away.
Navage gave me instant relief. I didn't have to wait 30 minutes. I didn't have to wait an hour, 90 minutes. I didn't have to wait a minute. I ran the rinse and I felt better.
Stop suffering from congestion and start breathing and feeling your best again with Navage. Navage.
I've had people ask me how I find relief, and I tell them Navage immediately. This thing is amazing.
Navage is available at Navage.com or at Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, and Rite Aid.
DTE's renewable energy projects build communities. Our wind and solar projects have provided Michigan communities with thousands of jobs over the last decade. Not to mention millions of dollars in additional tax revenue that funds roads, schools, and first responders. Libraries, parks, and even veteran services are supported by our renewable energy projects. So when clean energy projects thrive, our communities thrive too. DTE.
A violent crime is committed every 24 seconds. The U.S. Concealed Carry Association exists to provide you with firearms education, training, and access to self-defense liability insurance. So when trouble comes, you'll be ready. Over 800,000 Americans trust the USCCA, and right now, there's an exclusive, limited-time offer for radio listeners. Go to defendfamily.com to get a free family defense guide, a survival secrets training video from a retired FBI agent, and see all the benefits of membership. Go to defendfamily.com now.
Life hack number 7. Get an iPhone 12 on Straight Talk.
Life hack.
Here's how it works. You walk into Walmart, go to the electronics section, ask for iPhone 12 with 5G and a dual camera system, and select the new Silver Unlimited plan. They'll smile because it's a good plan. You get real unlimited data all for just $20 a month for the whole first year. Get it at Walmart or StraightTalk.com. Straight Talk. Less dollars, more sense. Taxes and fees apply. Requires activation of iPhone 12 and a new Silver Unlimited plan or higher end auto pay enrollment. $25 a month service credit applied for up to 12 months if eligibility requirements are met. For network management practices, visit StraightTalk.com.
Why is Navage perfect for allergy sufferers? Rhino Systems Medical Director Dr. Howard Levine explains.
If someone's exposed to allergens, they can get rid of those immediately by washing out the nose. Navage works by pulling saline in one nostril, through the nose and out the other nostril, sucking out allergens, mucus, dust, and germs. Experience on-the-spot relief so you could breathe easier, sleep better, and feel healthier.
Navage is available at Sam's Club, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, or online at Navage.com. Navage, breathe easy.
From the Stormmaster Exterior Studios, you are listening to 100.5 FM and 790 AM. And from Stormmaster Exteriors, you are listening online at WSGW.com.
The Independence Day Special from CBS, presented by Pepsi.
Welcome back to the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio. I'm Gil Gross. One of the fascinating things about the American Revolution is how many foreigners helped us win our independence. Von Steuben, Lafayette, and his French troops. And then people you more than likely have never heard of, like Hyder Ali and his son, Tipu Sultan. Who? Well, sit back and enjoy some more history about our independence you probably never learned in school. And this story is about a kingdom in India called Mysore, about the size of Kansas, which at the time was giving Britain a real battle.
The correspondence and the intelligence gathering of America's founding fathers, they reveal that, not only they keenly monitored English affairs across the globe, but also desired Britain to lose to her enemies, particularly to the Mysore kingdom, with whom England arguably faced its stiffest military and political challenge.
That's Amin Ahmed, a researcher who specializes in what we now call Karnataka, but which was long known as Mysore, then its own kingdom in what is now southern India. It existed from the late 1300s to 1947. Now, American diplomats knew two things of importance. Mysore had just won a major battle against Britain, so they knew Britain's weaknesses, and they had successfully enlisted the support of the French, who America desperately needed to support us in our own battle. Hyder Ali, the leader of Mysore, knew this and needed America to start succeeding, if for no other reason than to keep British troops and supplies tied up in the other side of the world. So he contacted Benjamin Franklin in Paris to say, we should work together. Franklin took note of a battle in Mysore, which the Indians won so handily, British soldiers were deserting.
And many Englishmen prepared to flee to England forever. These battle victories of the Mysore army, particularly the Battle of Pollilure, were reflected in the correspondence of the American revolutionaries in many of their letters.
Now, you may think, okay, the diplomats knew this, but did most Americans? Yes. Hyder Ali became a hero to American patriots. They chanted his name in the streets of Philadelphia, even named a racehorse after him.
One of the earliest mentions of Hyder Ali in America is of a horse that was named Hyder Ali in 1777.
They even named an American ship after Hyder Ali, which battled and beat a British ship, then called the General Monk, a ship that had originally been a captured American vessel called the George Washington. So Hyder Ali, the American ship, won George Washington back to our side. Well, at least the ship. So now he's not only a revered figure, Hyder Ali, he's good luck. And this was a big win because that British ship, the Hyder Ali, took off the seas, was blockading Philadelphia and starving out its people. In fact, before that win, the American skipper of the Hyder Ali wrote a poem to recruit Americans to join him.
And fortune still that crowns the brave shall guard us o'er the gloomy wave. A fearful heart betrays a knave. Success to the Hyder Ali.
Songs are written about Hyder Ali. He's the toast of the American continent, truly. After the victory at Yorktown, made possible in part because Hyder Ali had the British busy in India, at a Patriots' dinner in Trenton, glasses are raised to Hyder Ali as the great and heroic Hyder Ali, raised up by Providence to avenge the numberless cruelties perpetrated by the English on his unoffending countrymen. But there is an irony. With the American conflict over, the British are free to commit the full force of their troops and supplies to battling Hyder Ali and his son, the Sultan, back in India. And so, reinforced, in effect, by the American victory the kingdom of Mysore helped to happen, Mysore itself surrenders to, of all people, the man Americans had beaten at Yorktown, General Cornwallis. And remember, the French, and the majority of the soldiers who won for our side at Yorktown were French. The French came to our side in part because of what had been their successes at first in helping Hyder Ali in India. And Hyder Ali would know about America because they were getting help from the French.
The French were their common ally. The French guided and built and provided military advice. They helped Hyder Ali and later his son Tipu Sultan build many forts. They helped them with military technology. So I would not be surprised if Hyder Ali and his son Tipu Sultan would know about what was happening in America. They would probably have known the names of George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and others.
But did Hyder Ali and his son know that on the other side of the world? Know that their names were being praised in songs and poems and toasted by revolutionary leaders, much less the racehorse and the important ship named for Hyder Ali? But we have no idea. Pinned down in India by their own battle, they could not venture off to the New World as Lafayette or others did. We have no evidence that they knew they were heroes in America. And in time, as happened with so many of those who helped us win the revolution, the name Hyder Ali was forgotten in the United States. Though now, you know of him. Amin Ahmed, thank you for helping us tell this story.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you providing me the space to speak about an important but long forgotten story.
You're listening to the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio.
Look at your cup holder. It's empty. And you're feeling thirsty. Head to a nearby convenience store and fill it. With a Pepsi Zero Sugar, Mountain Dew, or Starry. Grab a delicious, refreshing Pepsi for the road.
Some people just know the best rate for you is a rate based on you with Allstate, not one based on anyone else. So if you drive safely, you could save money. Good to know. Visit allstate.com or call for a quote today.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent. So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle.
Tide Free and Gentle has no dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on her skin.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle. This back-to-school season, Tide and Downy are giving back with $1.5 million in scholarships. Enter to win. No purchase necessary. US/DC 17+. End September 30th. Rules. Tide.com/scholarship/official rules.
It's better over here.
If you're 55 and up, T-Mobile has an exclusive rate plan just for you. Right now, get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for just $30 a line. That's a 45% savings versus Verizon and AT&T. Plus, you can get one of the latest 5G phones free when you add a line. That's right, a free 5G phone. Experience all this and more on America's largest 5G network. So why wait? At T-Mobile, customers 55 and up can get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for only $30 a line. Just go to T-Mobile.com/choice55 or visit your local store to make the switch.
With AutoPay using debit or bank account plus taxes and fees, 45% off 2 lines versus AT&T Starter and Verizon Welcome. Plan benefits vary. Free phones up to $300 off with 24 monthly bill credits and qualifying new line for well-qualified customers plus tax and $35 device connection charge. Contact us before canceling entire account to continue remaining bill credits. Bill credits end if you pay off device early. See details at T-Mobile.com.
We're proud to make Pioneer Sugar for you and your family. Proud to be found in your kitchen, the heart of your home. And it doesn't really matter what you make with Pioneer Sugar. Whether it's with our granulated white, light brown, or soft confectioners, it's the memories you'll make using it that will matter the most. Pioneer Sugar, pure and all natural, made from sugar beets grown right here. What could be sweeter than that?
There's never any FOMO with the iHeartRadio app. You won't ever have to miss out on your favorite shows and contests with this radio station again. Radio 24/7, 365. We're here when you want us. Stay connected and listen anywhere when you download the free iHeartRadio app.
The smarter way to clean your floors. It's time to make the swap. Swiffer Power Mop.
Introducing the new Swiffer Power Mop, the all-in-one tool that gives you a mop and bucket clean in half the time. The solution's built right in, so no heavy bucket, and the pad has hundreds of scrubbing strips to get deep into grout. Don't mop harder, mop smarter.
Swiffer Power Mop. Swiffer Power Mop.
Can't escape the office this summer? Make your workdays tastier with delicious savings from EasyCater, the #1 site for workplace catering. With over 100,000 restaurants to choose from, save up to $40 when you order from participating restaurants. These scrumptious discounts are available exclusively on EasyCater.com. So order some food for work and save some green with delicious summer savings. Order now at EasyCater.com. Order must be placed and received between June 24th and July 5th. Restrictions apply. See offer details.
Listen to this station anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Odyssey. That's AUDACY.
WSGW is your station for focus. Discover the people and places, events and activities, the businesses and culture of the Great Lakes Bay region. Weekday mornings at 11 on WSGW and online WSGW.com.
The Independence Day Special from CBS, presented by Dairy Queen.
This is the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio. I'm Gil Gross. Benjamin Franklin was, of course, one of the most important people in our struggle for independence. His role in the Declaration of Independence is well known, though possibly less from history classes these days than from a high school production of 1776. That said, Franklin's contributions were unusual because after independence was declared, he was off to France on an important diplomatic mission. In fact, between London before the war and France after the war started, Franklin spent most of his later adult years in Europe. So what was he doing there? That is explained, and quite entertainingly at that, in the Apple Plus series Franklin, co-written and co-produced by Kirk Ellis. And Kirk, welcome. It's good to have you with us.
Good to be back. Thank you, Gil.
This is about Franklin's years in Paris. And by the way, congratulations at actually shooting in Paris rather than the usual made-for-TV substitute of Toronto or Vancouver. But why these years? Why did you choose this part of Franklin's biography?
Well, I mean, it's one of the least known, but perhaps the most important parts of his career. Without Benjamin Franklin, we would probably never have achieved independence. First, there would have been a problem because we were unable militarily to defeat the largest military power in the world, and we needed a sort of fairy godmother. In this case, it was France, which had an old score to settle with England. And in many ways, looking at that story from a contemporary lens, America was then in the position that the Ukraine is now, a country that most people weren't paying any attention to, that they regarded as unimportant and could only survive if powerful allies came to its rescue.
Now, before I get to the diplomacy and what I know you saw as a very John le Carré spy novel component of the show, let's talk about who Franklin is at this moment in history. He is estranged from his own son, William, and that's an important part of the show. William is governor of New Jersey under the British. William is over on the other side. He even ran a militia attacking Patriot forces in his state, which had to be a heavy burden on Franklin.
We don't know. We can only assume that that's true because he left us no record of his relations with his son other than a few very acrimonious letters. And there was never a post-war reconciliation, as you can imagine, owing to William's recalcitrance as a dyed-in-the-wool royalist. But it's important to remember, you were mentioning about Franklin spending most of his adult life abroad. He was slightly under suspicion himself at the Constitutional Convention. He had only just come back from England after being disgraced on the floor of Parliament as a colonial representative. And there were many in the Continental Congress who didn't believe he was more Englishman than American. But when it came time to seek out an alliance, the inescapable fact was that Franklin was the most traveled American of his era. There was nobody else who could have done the work.
Franklin does bring his grandson to Paris. Tell us about his grandson. Again, it's an important part of the show.
That's you're talking about William Temple Franklin. In actual fact, Franklin brought along 2 grandchildren. He also brought along his grandson Benny, but he immediately shipped him off to a Swiss school, and really they didn't have that much congress with one another. So, for purposes of dramatic elision in the story, we concentrated on the Temple angle, and Temple really did take to the French court. He had essentially been kidnapped by Benjamin, by his grandfather. He was picked up at his father's home in New Jersey and ostensibly taken to Philadelphia for his education. If you want to put that in air quotes, and Franklin promptly put him on a boat and went with him to France.
When Franklin was in London, he wrote very affectionate letters to his wife who refused to come with him, but he had a grand old time with women while he was in London, despite that affection. And again, in Paris, Franklin is clearly out to meet some ladies.
Well, I mean, Franklin's wife, Deborah, had actually died before he goes to Paris. And that had caused a great deal of animosity with William, who was left as the eldest son to deal with his mother's illness and death. And one of the letters that William sends to Benjamin in England is this really poignant account of her funeral, and the small procession, the frozen ground, and between the lines you can read the sort of bitterness and resentment that William feels for his father. But Franklin had never been a dutiful husband. And in France, he was, with her passing, free to indulge his whims, shall we say. And he did have a number of close female friends. The 2 closest were also his neighbors in Passy, on the outskirts of Paris where he was living. One was Madame Anne-Louise Brion de Jouy, who was a gifted composer and performer, and Madame Helvetius, the widow of one of France's best-known philosophers, who was actually a friend of Franklin's on his earlier trip to Paris as a scientist many years before. So those were the two relationships that carried on throughout his French sojourn.
And when we talk relationships, we take certain things for granted. And, who knows how true some of the correspondence that we have really is. But from what people say, he is passionate about both of these women that he knows in Paris, both of whom are very willing to flirt, swoon with him, be in his company and all of that. But at least from what we know historically, tell him, look, we'll do anything with you, but that is what we're not going to do. It's, of course, something he desperately wants to do.
That was certainly true of the relationship with Madame Brion, who was a bit neurasthenic. She was in a loveless marriage, as so many of them were among the French gentry. And she found this wonderful companion in Franklin, who appreciated her for her talent, for her wit, for her intelligence.
Okay, so what is Franklin's mission in Paris? Why is he there? What is he doing? Why is he there for so long?
So Franklin is working for a committee within the Continental Congress. And he is set on essentially a secret mission to Paris, unannounced, in order to secure an alliance of amity and commerce with the government of Louis XVI that will include a significant investment in the American cause and military personnel and ordnance that we desperately need to fight. That is the mission. And it takes him, he arrives in December of 1776, and he doesn't actually strike the treaty until the spring of 1778. And then he stays on throughout the war years and into the nervous armistice that follows the British surrender at Yorktown, in order to secure a lasting peace with Great Britain, which is the Treaty of Paris of 1783.
In a moment, we'll have more with Kirk Ellis and how Benjamin Franklin helped win the revolution from Paris, France. This is the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio.
Look at your cup holder. It's empty, and you're feeling thirsty. Head to a nearby convenience store and fill it with a Pepsi Zero Sugar, Mountain Dew, or Starry. Grab a delicious, refreshing Pepsi for the road.
Some people just know the best rate for you is a rate based on you with Allstate, not one based on anyone else. So if you drive safely, you could save money. Good to know. Visit allstate.com or call for a quote today.
Hey, what are you doing up on the step stool?
About to clean these light fixtures. The whole family's coming over. And if there's even a speck of dust in the house, my abuela will find it.
Here, I got a Swiffer duster to help with that.
A Swiffer what?
A Swiffer duster. It has this cool extendable handle that reaches 6 feet to get high and low, with fluffy dusters that easily trap and lock dust.
So no more step stool?
No more step stool.
Easily trap and lock dust from hard-to-reach places with the Swiffer duster. Love it or your money back.
I worked on the ranch here, first with my grandfather and then my dad. On this land, we do have a lot of sun, but also have a lot of wind. So having the turbines on the ranch is a benefit to us. I was apprehensive about the whole project, but now I think it's a win-win for everybody. We will produce power for the folks around this area, and this land will have a legacy. As a rancher, I think that's what we really hope for.
Fuel for Thought, presented by the American Clean Power Association.
Sneezing, coughing, stuffy nose, runny nose, postnasal drip, interrupted sleeping. I was groggy at the end of the day.
Allergies and sinus congestion were making Jana miserable. Then, a friend recommended Navage. Navage provides immediate drug-free congestion relief, flushing your nasal passages with refreshing saline and sucking out mucus, germs, and other airborne irritants. Navage helps you breathe easier, sleep better, and feel your best right away.
Navage gave me instant relief. I didn't have to wait 30 minutes. I didn't have to wait an hour, 90 minutes. I didn't have to wait a minute. I ran the rinse and I felt better.
Stop suffering from congestion and start breathing and feeling your best again with Navage. Navage.
I've had people ask me how I find relief, and I tell them Navage immediately. This thing is amazing.
Navage is available at Navage.com or at Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, and Rite Aid.
This is Christiana Malagata, your host of That's What She Said. This week, we will talk with Rida Bates and hear about her history as a Lebanese immigrant, how she uplifts her family, and how she empowers others through teaching and at her gym, Pure Energy.
That's What She Said with Christiana Malagata. Sunday evenings at 6 on WSGW, 790 AM and 100.5 FM, and online at WSGW.com.
WSGW is your station for Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins, taking the serious stuff seriously and laughing at the absurd. Weekdays at noon on WSGW and online WSGW.com.
The CBS 4th of July Special, presented by Progressive Insurance.
We continue now with the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio. I'm Gil Gross. And continuing our talk with the co-writer and co-producer of the Apple Plus TV special, Franklin, about how Ben Franklin got us soldiers and money from France to win the revolution. Franklin's liaisons with women are not just window dressing to the show, because as you watch it, you realize Franklin uses his wit, his education, and his powers of seduction, not just with women, but the men who are in power as well. His talents are weirdly complementary in that way.
Oh, yes. Again, right person on the right stage at the right time. But to expand on what you were asking, one of the great pleasures in putting the show together and writing it was this opportunity to bring back into the spotlight all of these individuals who were Franklin's colleagues and co-conspirators in France, whose memory has been kind of forgotten, not only here in America, but also in France itself. There was Franklin there as the fulcrum, but there were all these people around him who helped get the job done.
A final thing. Revolution is not only done with guns, and this show shows us battles may be more exciting to watch sometimes on TV and in the movies, but diplomacy is always a key problem with depiction in films. A, it's not a battle, but B, really good diplomacy, and I can tell you this as a reporter, very often you have no idea what's really going on and what's true and not true, because both sides have to go back to their side with a convincing argument that their side won. It's amazing you were able to bring off successfully how meeting the challenge of diplomacy at work can actually be entertainment as well. Usually it isn't.
Well, I think that Stacy Schiff, who wrote the original book, A Great Improvisation, Franklin, France, and the Birth of America, had done a lot of that legwork, and she had unpacked all of the stories from both sides and really dug into the French archives to get a real sense of what was going on in those salons and in those palace offices at Versailles. So, I mean, for me, the scenes in the show in the last two episodes, which are really 6 men in a room, 3 from the British side and 3 from the American side, sitting down and talking about what not only America, but what the world is going to look like. That's as exciting to me as a nail-biting suspense drama, because that's where the work is done. Battles can only get you so far. And then it was America after Yorktown looking to its future and what it wanted to get from both France and England that played into those final treaties.
Well, congratulations on the show. It's brilliant. One of the things I noticed, because as you know, I saw it with you and with an audience in Santa Fe in a movie theater. It just looks spectacular. Sometimes you blow up a TV show on a movie screen and you go, oh, that's not this. Oh, and look at that. That guy's wearing a modern watch. And it's often just as interesting as a story and beautifully acted, it usually doesn't look this gorgeous blown up in a movie screen. This does. Kirk Ellis is the co-writer and co-producer of Franklin, the TV series on Apple Plus. Kirk, thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Always good to talk to you.
Stay right here for more of the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio.
Broadcasting from the Stormmaster Exterior Studios, WSGW, Saginaw Bay City, Midland, WSGW FM, Carlton.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by O'Reilly Auto Parts.
I'm Peter King. A week after his disastrous debate, a mea culpa from President Biden.
I had a bad night. And the fact of the matter is that, I screwed up. I made a mistake. But I learned from my father, when you get knocked down, just get back up.
Mr. Biden appearing on the Earl Ingram show on Civic Media in Wisconsin. The president met with Democratic governors last night. Many say they still support him, but the list of congressional Democrats telling him to withdraw from the race appears to be growing. The U.S. election, of course, is 4 months and a day away. Great Britain's election is being held today.
I don't think I would ever vote Conservative again after the Brexit vote.
I'm Vicky Barker in London. Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has been warning British voters that handing the left-leaning opposition Labour Party too big a majority today will create
a Labour Party with a blank cheque to do whatever they want.
But all the opinion polls suggest that's exactly what British voters do want after 14 years of Conservative rule marked by rising prices and a struggling health and social welfare system.
The Cayman Islands have been feeling the wrath of Hurricane Beryl, even with a storm center south and moving away. Top winds are 115 miles per hour. Beryl's been close enough for the Caymans to feel most of it. Regiment Officer Tyler Lawson says they were prepared.
So there are 14 shelters in Grand Cayman, 7 of which are emergency medical center.
National Weather Service meteorologist Jacob Asherman on Beryl's next target.
Beryl's expected to take kind of a west-northwesterly track and is forecast to impact the Yucatan Peninsula and parts of Belize beginning tonight. So with that, Beryl should maintain hurricane strength as it makes landfall.
The 4th of July means a lot of this. It also means potential danger for people who don't leave those to the pros.
There were 9,700 fireworks-related injuries last year and 8 deaths. Those numbers are down from the pandemic years, when more Americans use fireworks at home instead of heading to crowded professional displays.
We've seen the numbers go down, which is great. But again, there's still way too many injuries and deaths.
Alex Hohensarik is chair of the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Even legal fireworks you find in stores can be dangerous if not used properly.
If you wouldn't give a kid a blowtorch, you really shouldn't give them a sparkler either.
Of course, you can always head to a public display and leave the fireworks to the professionals. Nancy Chen, CBS News, New York.
Fireworks are illegal in New York State, and Syracuse police say they're using drones to scope out violators, especially big neighborhood block parties that have put on their own fireworks shows in the past. This is CBS News.
Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get the parts and service you need fast from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Get ready to rock your summer with Saginaw Eagles Landing Casino and Hotel's free Tribute to Summer concert series. On July 11th, relive the glory days with The Rock Show, the ultimate tribute to Journey. Tommy K's vocals will make you feel like it's Steve Perry himself. Don't forget your lawn chairs and blankets. Gates open at 5 p.m. Show starts at 7 p.m. Plus get $10 in premium play for attending. Saginaw Eagles Landing Casino and Hotel. Real fun, real friendly.
Attention, golfers. Tee up for this year's Core 4 Invitational, taking place at the Sawmill Golf Club Tuesday, July 30th, powered by Branham's Jewelry. The Core 4 Invitational is a 4-person best ball event, only $250 per team. First place takes home an overnight stay and golf package at Shanty Creek Resort. Thanks to Buck Insurance, you'll have a shot at winning $10,000 in the hole-in-one contest. For more information on all the great contests and prizes, or to register your team, visit 1063thecore.com.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm. If you own a timeshare, don't miss this public service announcement from Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group.
If you receive an unsolicited phone call or mail piece to discuss selling, renting, or especially canceling your timeshare, don't fall for it. If you really want out of your timeshare, hang the phone up immediately or throw that mail piece in the trash and contact your timeshare resort or Wesley Financial Group for assistance with your timeshare. As the only Inc. 500 timeshare cancellation company, our knowledge, experience, and results has made Wesley a trusted resource for over 40,000 families we've helped get out of their timeshare. Give us a call and I'll send you our timeshare exit information kit free with the straight facts about your timeshare and all of your options for cancellation.
Call for your free info kit, 800-945-5577, 800-945-5577, 800-945-5577.
Here's your WSGW weatherology forecast. We'll see a few spotty rain showers possible late today. Otherwise, a blend of clouds and sunshine develops with a high in the upper 80s. Winds out of the west around 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tonight, mostly cloudy and a low near 67. By Friday, a chance for showers and thunderstorms, cloudy, high of 82 degrees. Then by Saturday, mostly cloudy, a high of 77. Sunday, sunshine, a high of 83 degrees. Then by Monday, a chance for rain showers here late. Partial sunshine develops, a high around 86. Tuesday, chance for showers and storms, high of 81. I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki with the WSGW weatherology forecast.
Currently, it's 79.
Welcome to Independence Day 2024 as WSGW continues to celebrate Independence Day with you. It's 11:06. Now it's the final hour of the CBS Independence Day Special.
The CBS 4th of July Special, presented by Allstate Insurance.
This is the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio. I'm Gil Gross. One of the things that becomes clear studying the American Revolution is we did not do it alone. We needed the help of the French troops and officers, a Prussian military officer named von Steuben, Haydar Ali of Mysore, India, and the Oneida, now called the Oneida Native American tribe. Why don't we know about that part of our history? Well, University of North Carolina professor Joseph Glathar is the co-author of Forgotten Allies, the Oneida Indians and the American Revolution. Good to have you with us.
I'm delighted to be here, Gil.
Choosing sides or choosing to just stay out of it had to be difficult for Native Americans. The British had fought against them, but at least the British were mainly across the ocean. Americans were not only here, but they had already been demanding westward expansion into Native American lands. So how did the Oneida end up on the side of the American Revolution?
It's a complicated story. The westward push by settlers in New York had just barely reached the Oneidas. The Oneidas were one of the 5 Iroquois nations. Actually, the Tuscaroras had moved up and were occupying Oneida land. So you had from east to west, Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca. And as a result of that, the Oneidas had extensive trade with the colonists. And so they had built a good rapport, but their homeland wasn't really being transgressed by colonial hunters and trackers and settlers. So that ensured a good relationship. In addition, there was a clergyman who had come there and had converted large numbers of prominent Oneidas. His name was Samuel Kirkland. And Kirkland was a strong supporter of the revolution. And so when the British provided their side of the situation to the Oneidas, Kirkland provided the rebel side of the story. And since Kirkland was in such good standing, he helped persuade them as well.
Various tribes choosing, say, the British side, others choosing the American side, meant many Native Americans ended up at war with one another in a war that wasn't even of their making.
The Oneidas were trapped because the other Iroquois nations were largely in support of the British. And that meant that the fighting would, to a great extent, take place on Oneida homeland. And so the Oneidas had a responsibility to protect their homeland. It was more than simply property as we would think of it in our terms. It was an ancestral homeland too. And if the Oneida land was going to be the battleground between the rebels and the Indians, then the homeland would have been destroyed.
And both sides really wanted them. From the French and Indian Wars, there were generals on both sides, including George Washington, who knew what great fighters they were.
Yes, they had earned a lot of respect. The Oneidas, the Iroquois in general were really the most extraordinary of the fighters among the Indians east of the Mississippi River because of their linkage through a kind of confederation. So if you went to war against one of the nations, you were going to go to war against all five of them. And so they were able to combine the military prowess of five Indian nations, and that made them the holy terrors of the Indian world. You just didn't want to mess with the Iroquois.
Yeah, in fact, the Iroquois, who chose to side with the British, gave George Washington the nickname Town Destroyer because he burned their villages and their crops. So again, a lot of mixed feelings here among Native Americans.
Without a doubt. Even the Oneidas weren't universally in support of the rebel cause. Some Oneidas went on the side of the British, but the overwhelming number of Oneidas supported the rebel cause and risked their lives, and quite a few lost their lives.
They risked their lives, they lost their lives, and they really made a pledge to fight on the American side. Deacon Thomas, one of the Oneida leaders, said, "We are determined to lay our bones in the American forge." I mean, that's quite a statement. Not every person who was like living in America at the time would have made a statement like that.
No, it's actually so eloquent. The Indians had an oral tradition, and as a result, there's an eloquence to their speech, which is really extraordinary. They found that, or studies have found that the further people are away from the written word, the stronger their oral traditions are and how precise they are. So I remember finding a document, a Revolutionary War document, and there was an interview with an Oneida 100 years later, and he didn't have access to the document, only the colonists did. And essentially, he explained what was in that document almost word for word. And it was a lengthy document, and it was about Oneidas siding with the rebels. So it's amazing how these traditions were passed from one generation to another with extraordinary precision.
I want to make clear the fact that this was no minor, besides, the danger of injury and death and losing lands. I mean, really, the Oneida were risking everything to side with the Americans. And, as we've stressed, telling the history of the Revolution, often in the early years of the Revolution outside of Saratoga, there wasn't a lot to cheer about. There wasn't a lot to make somebody who had chosen the side of the American patriots think, oh, yeah, this is going to work out well for me.
No. What really worked out or marked a dramatic transition was the campaign of 1777 in New York. And there, the Oneidas played a vital role because the Oneidas were very much in support of the rebels in the Fort Schuyler campaign. That was one element of it. They actually lost people at the Battle of Oriskany. And then in the Battle of Saratoga, their contributions have been greatly undersold by historians of the American Revolution, because as the British began to get trapped, it was the Indian supporters of the British abandoned their army. The Oneidas then controlled the area in conjunction with some Massachusetts Indians, controlled the outside area. So whenever small parties wanted to go foraging, the Oneidas and the other Indians were able to pounce on them. And as a result, the British Army couldn't get supplies, couldn't get food, and ultimately surrendered.
Yeah, and that was a major factor. I mean, we've stressed this in other parts of the history of the Revolution over the years on this yearly broadcast as well, that one of the major things, and this is true of any battle, but especially when you're fighting overseas, is just supply lines. It's eventually the major factor that leads us to a victory at Yorktown. So the Oneida being able to cut off the British from their supplies is major, which brings up the question people are probably thinking about listening to this. How useful were they in winning the war? How important were they?
I think they're a really important player. I would say that New York was probably the single biggest battleground. New York and perhaps Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey were the big battleground areas in the American Revolution. And the Oneidas were always there on the side of the rebels. They came through time after time after time. So, and they also sent Oneidas down to assist Washington and his army in Pennsylvania in 1876. In fact, if you travel into Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia, now what is Philadelphia? Back then it wasn't. There's a grave marker in honor of 4 Oneidas who lost their lives in the American Revolution.
Well, let's talk about Valley Forge and that whole campaign around Philadelphia. The British are controlling Philadelphia. Washington's at Valley Forge. Everybody knows the story about the Americans freezing and starving there. That I learned in school. What I did not learn in school is about the ways they survived. So tell us the story of Polly Cooper.
Polly Cooper was an Oneida woman, and it was not that unusual for women to accompany large military expeditions. And she was part of a group of about 50 Oneida who traveled down to join Washington's army, and she brought supplies. The army was in bad shape, and so the tradition, at least the oral tradition, is that she brought down large amounts of corn. And in honor of her service, Martha Washington gave her a shawl, which the Oneidas presently have at their museum in New York.
Joe Glatter has more of the forgotten story of how the Oneida Indians helped America win the Revolution. That's coming up here on the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio.
It's better over here. If you're 55 and up, T-Mobile has an exclusive rate plan just for you. Right now, get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for just $30 a line. That's a 45% savings versus Verizon and AT&T. Plus, you can get one of the latest 5G phones free when you add a line. That's right, a free 5G phone. Experience all this and more on America's largest 5G network. So why wait? At T-Mobile, customers 55 and up can get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for only $30 a line. Just go to T-Mobile.com/choice55 or visit your local store to make the switch.
With AutoPay using debit or bank account plus taxes and fees, 45% off 2 lines versus AT&T Starter and Verizon Welcome. Plan benefits vary. Free phones up to $300 off with 24 monthly bill credits and qualifying new line for well-qualified customers plus tax and $35 device connection charge. Contact us before canceling entire account to continue remaining bill credits. Bill credits end if you pay off device early. See details at T-Mobile.com.
I want to learn how to cook, but I keep ordering takeout.
Accomplishing goals is hard, but when your goal is to learn a new language, Babbel makes it easy. In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel will help you start having conversations in as little as 3 weeks. Words and phrases you'll actually use. So when someone asks, "How's your French going?" you can say,
Babbel facilite grandement l'apprentissage d'une nouvelle langue.
Now try Babbel for free at Babbel.com. That's Babbel.com. Babbel.com.
Hi, I'm Angie Hicks, co-founder of Angie. When you use Angie for your home projects, you know all your jobs will be done well. Roof repair? Done well. Kitchen sink install? Done well. Deck upgrades? Done well. Electrical upgrade? Done well. Angie's been connecting homeowners with skilled pros for nearly 30 years, so we know the difference between done and done well. Hire high-quality, certified pros at Angie.com.
Krizak's House Family Restaurant has always been the place to go for your authentic home-cooked foods with a European flair at reasonable prices. A great place to get together with family and friends for lunch and dinner and special events too. Order what you want in American and Polish foods and just pick it up at the restaurant ready to go. Or have your celebration right at Krizak's. Call 989-894-5531. Krizak's House Family Restaurant, corner of Cass and Michigan on Bay City's South End.
Why is Navage perfect for allergy sufferers? Rhino Systems Medical Director Dr. Howard Levine explains.
If someone's exposed to allergens, they can get rid of those immediately by washing out the nose. Navage works by pulling saline in one nostril, through the nose and out the other nostril, sucking out allergens, mucus, dust, and germs. Experience on-the-spot relief so you can breathe easier, sleep better, and feel healthier.
Navage is available at Sam's Club, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, or online at Navage.com. Navage, breathe easy.
WSGW is your station for Terry Henney's Farm Show. Market prices, agricultural news, special interviews, and detailed weather. All with Terry. Weekdays at 11:30 a.m. on WSGW and online WSGW.com.
The CBS 4th of July Special, presented by Primatene Mist.
In a moment, more on how the revolution was won with the help of forgotten allies here on the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio. And that story about the Oneidas and Polly Cooper bringing corn to the people at Valley Forge, it makes it sound like, well, it's a good thing we're on the side of the Oneidas, or the Oneidas are on our side because they have food. But the Oneidas actually pay a pretty heavy price for supporting the Americans because the Continental Army did not have much food or anything for itself. And so the Oneidas backing them, a lot of them starved during the war and, after it as well.
Yes, the Oneidas were really, because they were in the front lines, because their homeland was in effect the battleground. The Oneidas suffered the destruction of 2 of their villages. They had 3 villages, and 2 of them were burnt to the ground during the war. They suffered all sorts of hardships, food problems. Eventually, a large number of them had to migrate to eastern New York, and then and they were put up in quarters, kind of old cabins, and then smallpox roared through the Indian population, killing off a huge number of Oneidas. So the Oneidas' losses during the course of the war from combat and from disease were really significant.
And after the war, and there's no way to put a good face on this, despite American patriots talking about how important they were, how great they were, how necessary they were to win the war. After the war, we betrayed them.
That's exactly right. What was sad was that the Oneidas, because they were in such great good standing with the rebels, were able to negotiate on behalf of fellow Iroquois so that their fellow Iroquois weren't badly punished because they sided with the British. But of course, as I said, the population was moving westward, and it was just a matter of time before they started encroaching on Oneida lands. In the aftermath of the war, the Oneidas got a very favorable treatment from the Continental Congress, and then later the United States Congress and the President George Washington. In fact, some Oneidas even visited Washington when he was president, and the agreement was that no Oneida land could be taken from them in treaties or other ways without the approval of Congress. But that's not what happened. People came in and took the land, and it's kind of a complicated cultural issue. But the bottom line is that each individual in the Iroquois Nation speaks for himself, but only himself. The notion of a hierarchical structure is largely a European or Western concept within the. So I guess that would be European that the rebels embraced as well. An Oneida chief didn't have the right to sign away the homeland or sign away lots of land in a treaty or sell it to anyone. That they didn't have that right. But of course, whites put pressure on the Oneidas, on selected individuals who ended up signing treaties. Eventually, a large portion of the surviving Oneidas moved out to Wisconsin, and they're still there. And in the end, the Oneidas were down to 32 acres of land in New York, when they had literally hundreds of thousands of acres of land before the American Revolution.
What's shocking about this is George Washington had a relationship with them. He praised them. He invited some of their leaders to Yorktown to see what they helped to do.
That's right. They even came, the Oneidas were even at Yorktown. I mean, it's just a sad situation where these Indians did everything that they were capable of doing realistically for the rebel cause, and then the victors just kind of ignored them over the course of time. There's that shocking story for locals that when Lafayette was brought back to the United States on his 40th anniversary, touring around, technically 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration, he traveled around the United States. And when he came into what was the old Oneida homeland, the locals came out and praised him and had speeches for him and so on. And Lafayette said, "Where are my Oneida friends?" And no one had even thought of inviting the Oneidas who had fought on the side of the Revolution. And so they sent out a messenger. A number of the Oneidas came to see their old friend Lafayette. And what was amazing is people were shocked. They had no idea that the Oneidas had participated in any significant way in the Revolution, and that they had befriended Lafayette, that one Oneida had actually returned to France when Lafayette went back to France after the Revolution. He brought an Oneida with him, who stayed with him for a while and then returned to the United States. So it's a sad commentary. The title of our book is Forgotten Allies, and it is precisely that. It's a case of forgotten allies.
The fact that Lafayette looks around at the crowd in Utica, New York, and goes, "Where are my Oneida friends?" also tells us how quickly this happened. I mean, this happens in Lafayette's lifetime. So why did we not just would do this? It was individuals wanting their land, but why did we just completely erase this story from history? I think for most Americans listening to this is going to be the first time they've heard about the Oneidas helping the revolutionary cause. Was it because some people who wanted and took their land thought, well, it might look bad if people were reminded we're taking land from people who help us win the war in the first place, or they just thought so little of Native Americans? I mean, how did this just kind of disappear?
I think both of those arguments are correct. That is, people were strongly prejudiced against Indians. The Indians were savages. They hadn't tamed the land. They hadn't conquered the land. The land was there for first British colonists' use, and then later on American settlers. That was certainly one factor. And of course, by diminishing the Oneida contribution, it certainly makes it easier to take away the land. A lot of the people who lived in the United States thought in terms of progress. Progress was expanding westward. Progress was establishing farms. By the time Lafayette came, the Erie Canal was already open. So there were large towns popping up along the Erie Canal. They were shipping goods from Europe through New York Port, across up the Hudson, the Mohawk, the Erie Canal, into the Great Lakes, all the way out into what was then the old Northwest Territory, and the states from the old Northwest Territory: Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan. So it's an extraordinarily transformed landscape, and they just saw no part in that new world for people like the Oneidas.
So bringing this up to today, because you talk to a lot of people to get access to a lot of the information for this, a lot of the history for it. How do the surviving Oneidas today feel about their participation in the revolution, considering what happened, and what pride do they feel or not feel about that?
When I came into this project, and my colleague James Kirby Martin came into it, the Oneidas knew that they had a great story. They knew that they had fought on the side of the rebels, and that they had had great relationships with a number of prominent individuals, including George Washington. But they didn't have what we would consider more traditional evidence, documentary evidence. They had the oral tradition passed on from generation to generation. And so what we were able to do is go out and find the documentary evidence. And after we wrote the book, we turned all that documentary evidence over to the Oneidas. They take enormous pride in their role in the American Revolution. It's one of the most powerful themes in their nation. And I really admire them for that. I think that what they did was extraordinary, and their contributions to the American Revolution were genuine. They were bona fide, and they were considerable. And the mere fact that so many of them sacrificed tremendous hardship, lost their homes, lost loved ones, is a real tribute to the Oneida Indian Nation.
The book about all this is Forgotten Allies, the Oneida Indians and the American Revolution. The co-author, Joseph Gottar from the University of North Carolina. Joe, thank you so much for telling us this story. I really appreciate it.
Gil, it's a pleasure to be interviewed by somebody who really knows what they're talking about. It's a real treat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. You're listening to the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds, which could be life-changing. I mean, you could put that money towards concert tickets for your daughter to see that singer who sings about painful breakups. And one song will inspire your little beauty to break up with that beast she's dating, Brian. Instead, she'll date someone who's nice and worthy of her love, not someone who addresses you and your spouse as bro. And it's all because you could save money switching at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, not available in all states.
Find what you love, love what you find. A Total Wine and More. There's so much waiting for you. All kinds of beers and thousands of wines. Guides in the know and prices so low, it just might blow your mind. You're gonna find what you love and love what you find.
Only at Total Wine and More. Drink responsibly. Be 21.
I'm Paul Young, candidate for Congress, and I approve this message.
Build the wall. Deport illegals. Put America first. That's Paul Young's plan. The conservative choice for Congress. Pro-Trump and proud of it. Paul Young will secure our border and bring back Michigan jobs. Young served in President Trump's administration, enforcing immigration law to keep illegals out. That's why Young's been with Trump since 2016 and never wavered. But Mary Draves, she serves Democrats. Gretchen Whitmer handpicked Draves to her climate council to push tax hikes and mandates on Michiganders. It's no wonder why Draves backed Biden's Green New Deal and opposed Trump's policies to protect American workers. Draves even donated to Trump-hating Democrats who tried to impeach him. We can't trust Mary Draves to stand with Trump, and Michigan can't afford to send her to Congress. Paid for by Paul Young for Congress.
The WSGW Morning Team.
The WSGW online poll, Biden and Trump after the debate. While President Biden's debate performance is receiving most of the attention, both parties have questions to ponder prior to Election Day. Do Democrats need Biden to step down? Can he win another election? Do Republicans want Biden to step down? Could former President Trump win against a potentially more formidable candidate? The WSGW online poll for you. We try to find something for both Biden and Trump supporters. What best describes your thoughts, whether you support Biden or Trump? You could vote Biden should stay in the race because he'll win, or Biden should step down because he cannot win. You could say Trump needs Biden to stay in the race because he's the only candidate he can beat, or Trump will win against any candidate. Or you could vote I don't care because I don't support either one. Head to WSGW.com, scroll down the homepage, find the online poll box to cast your vote.
Your Morning Team, 5:30 to 9 on WSGW. The WSGW Studios and WSGW Online are sponsored by Stormmaster Exteriors, your ultimate solution for windows, roofing, and exterior services.
The Independence Day Special from CBS, presented by New Nordic.
Happy holiday. This is the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio. I'm Gil Gross. The 4th of July is a time for fireworks, parades, concerts, barbecues, and, hot dog eating contests. Eating contests have a long history at county fairs, but the July 4th contest at Nathan's Famous on Brooklyn's Coney Island has an interesting history. In the early 70s, Nathan's gave the contest a PR push by telling the news media that they had been holding this contest since 1916, which sparked interest in it, and it started to get nationwide coverage. Now, Few things you need to know about this before we start. First, there's a famed New York PR guy that I knew named Morty Matz. And it seems Morty kind of made the whole thing about the history of it before 1972 up. There had never been a Nathan's hot dog eating contest before then. That's fine. It became famous now. Second, if this had happened at a county fair in some small town in middle America, you probably still would not have heard about it. No network was about to put a crew and a correspondent on a plane to cover people wolfing down Franks. But it was in the media center of New York, where an assignment editor on a holiday could tell a cameraman to take the F train down to Coney, get some film for an anchor to talk over. That got it fed to stations around the country, and people loved it, and it became the talk of a nation. And lastly, competitive eating has become such a thing that it's become a source of big prize money, big competitions, and even bigger coverage. And in fact, ESPN, which has covered the July 4th contest for years, just extended its contract with Nathan's to 2029. And here are two of the major annual competitive eating contestants, Nick Weary and the perennial Nathan's women's champion, Mickey Sudo, who are known together as the Hungry Couple. And I thank you both for being with us. Let's start with the probably someday to be made a streaming rom-com. You two are a couple. How do you meet?
We actually met at the hotel gym on the morning of the Nathan's hot dog eating contest.
So you met at the hotel then, and it was like love at first sight? Because, on dates, I used to try and be careful not to talk with my mouth full, but that's essentially an attraction for you two.
Actually, there were no sparks on that day. It was all business. But our first date was at it was at an eating contest.
And Nick, what was it for you?
I think we always joke around that we love each other in spite of competitive eating. But she approached me as the 4-time champ, and I was more than happy to speak with her, take a picture. And we just had a mutual friend that told us we should talk. And much to both of us kind of push back, but eventually when we did, we kind of realized that we had way more in common than the ability to eat 50 hot dogs in 10 minutes.
And here's something that very few couples are able to say, that you had your first date after a 107-pound hamburger eating challenge.
That was a pre-date. It was we like you said, we ate a 100+ pound burger as a team of 10. I think he just invited me onto the team so that he could get to know me better.
So let me ask you each individually this question, because I'm sure it's probably the first thing people ask you. Why? Mickey, let's start with you. Why competitive eating? How'd you get into this? Why was it an attractive thing for you?
I mean, why not? It was weird. I really just fell into it. We always tell people, we didn't choose competitive eating chose us. I tried a 12-pound pho, or Vietnamese noodle soup challenge, and became the first person and the only person to date to finish that. And I just started getting requests. And I just enjoyed early success, and winning is fun. And now I get to run around the country and the world with my best friend, my love of my life, and sometimes even my 3-year-old son.
All right. So best friend, love of her life. How did you get into this?
For me, I was a competitive bodybuilder for about 10 years, and my appetite became a running joke amongst my friends. And they encouraged me to do a punchki eating contest, like Polish jelly donuts around Fat Tuesday. And I decided to do it because I could win money. I got free donuts, and we raised money for charity. So that sounded like a pretty sweet deal. And I won, and I did those 3 things. And I'm like, wait a minute, I could do this consistently, like free food, money, and charity. Like I am in. And it's kind of just spiraled out of control from there.
So when people hear a line like, hey, I can get free donuts and they pay me for it, people are going to imagine, if they've never seen you, Homer Simpson, let's face it. But the thing that shocks people, I think, when they see the two of you is you're both in great shape. How does that happen?
Well, I thought I was in great shape, and then I met Nick. So
we have a pretty good balance of, obviously, sometimes we have caloric anarchy with 70 bratwursts in 8 minutes or 340 slices of cheese and things like that. But the other days, if you looked at our fridge, I think most people would be pretty bored looking at kale and boneless, skinless chicken and avocados. And we're in the gym 5 to 6 days a week, obviously chasing the kids around the other days. So there's a balance that goes into being able to consume, 15, 20 pounds of something.
Since Nick Wary and Mickey Soda are also stuffed with good stories, we're going to be back in a bit with more of their 4th of July hot dog eating festival here on the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio.
Some people just know the best rate for you is a rate based on you with Allstate, not one based on anyone else. So if you drive safely, you could save money. Good to know. Visit allstate.com or call for a quote today.
Look at your cup holder. It's empty, and you're feeling thirsty. Head to a nearby convenience store and fill it with a Pepsi Zero Sugar, Mountain Dew, or Starry. Grab a delicious, refreshing Pepsi for the road.
The American cowboy is everything that makes this country great.
There's a freedom to being a cowboy.
Being a cowgirl is not a safe, easy path, but it's one that's very rewarding.
The American cowgirl is dedicated to her livestock, she's dedicated to her country, and she's dedicated to her family.
The American cowboy is honest.
We're the backbone of how this country was founded.
There's a whole lot of legacy that goes along with being a cowboy, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Boot barn, keep west.
It's better over here. If you're 55 and up, T-Mobile has an exclusive rate plan just for you. Right now, get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for just $30 a line. That's a 45% savings versus Verizon and AT&T. Plus, you can get one of the latest 5G phones free when you add a line. That's right, a free 5G phone. Experience all this and more on America's largest 5G network. So why wait? At T-Mobile, customers 55 and up can get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for only $30 a line. Just go to T-Mobile.com/choice55 or visit your local store to make the switch.
With AutoPay using debit or bank account plus taxes and fees, 45% off 2 lines versus AT&T Starter and Verizon Welcome. Plan benefits vary. Free phones up to $300 off with 24 monthly bill credits and qualifying new line for well-qualified customers plus tax and $35 device connection charge. Contact us before canceling entire account to continue remaining bill credits. Bill credits end if you pay off device early. See details at T-Mobile.com.
While you're comfortable inside your home or business, the weather takes a toll on your roof. Wind, rain, hail, UV rays, and the heat of the sun cause premature failure of your shingles. Everyone loves to save money. If you have an aging roof, don't spend a lot of money on replacement. Get a RoofMax shingle treatment and get some peace of mind. Get more life for less money. Guaranteed with RoofMax, a powerful fusion of science and nature. Call Ben today at 859-6751.
Why is Navage perfect for allergy sufferers? Rhino Systems Medical Director Dr. Howard Levine explains.
If someone's exposed to allergens, they can get rid of those immediately by washing out the nose. Navage works by pulling saline in one nostril, through the nose and out the other nostril, sucking out allergens, mucus, dust, and germs. Experience on-the-spot relief so you can breathe easier, sleep better, and feel healthier.
Navage is available at Sam's Club, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, or online at Navage.com. Navage, breathe easy.
Welcome to retirement. Now, replace your paycheck. To local financial coach Kevin Ray, this is what retirement planning is all about.
Building monthly paychecks. And how you build those monthly paychecks is going to determine how well in retirement you're going to enjoy it. So sit down and build a good framework, and it starts with income.
So build your framework with Kevin and the team at Insight Folios today by calling 888-885-PLAN. That's 888-885-7526.
Incoming transmission from RocketGrabPlus.com.
We have a fantastic deal for you this week at RocketGrabPlus.com. Get the $219 Ogama County Fair Ultimate Package for only $109.50. This package includes 2 concert tickets, 4 grandstand tickets, and 4 weekly passes, each with a home-cooked dinner, drink, and dessert. Happening August 13th through the 17th in West Branch. Don't miss the Ogama County Fair or this amazing deal from RocketGrabPlus.com.
Transmission terminated.
WSGW is your station for your morning team. News, weather, sports, entertainment, and information. Charlie, Mike, Jonathan, and you from 5:30 to 9 on WSGW and online WSGW.com.
The CBS 4th of July Special, presented by Progressive Insurance.
Welcome back to the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio. I'm Gil Gross. Fortunately, a mere bystander in the stories Mickey Sudo and Nick Wary are telling us about competitive eating at Nathan's hot dog eating contest held every 4th of July at Brooklyn's Coney Island. So you keep the weight off. That's clear from seeing the two of you. But what's your? Pardon me for wondering if this is too personal. Don't answer. But what's your cholesterol like? I mean, do you go to a competitive statin popping competition the next day?
There's no Lipitor in the house. No, but that said, my blood work now I get done quarterly, and it's better than it was when I was competitively bodybuilding. I'm at about the ratios are ultimately the most important without going super nerd on everybody, and I'm about a 6-to-1 ratio my cholesterol, so pretty phenomenal because 350 days a year, my nutrition and our nutrition is probably better than 95% of the population. And we're active, we exercise, what have you, we control body composition. And while eating 9 pounds of Spam or 300 plus slices of cheese isn't necessarily the greatest idea, I think there's an excellent balance to what we do. And I think we know how to balance it now as part of our job.
It's funny, I can get past almost anything except the 9 pounds of Spam.
That was rough.
So, Mickey, how do you feel after one of these competitions? I mean, you have to feel good you won, but I mean, how do you physically feel?
I mean, some contests are more physically taxing than others. For example, when we eat chicken wings or baby back ribs, we're not at capacity at the end of, 8 minutes or 10 minutes? Hot dogs is very demanding. It tests your speed, your coordination, your capacity, your technique. At the end, honestly, having given my all for 10 minutes under the beating sun and the unforgiving heat, I feel a little bit exhausted, but that adrenaline really just like keeps me going. I mean, there's no feeling like winning at Coney Island.
As has come up, so to speak, a couple of times in this interview, you eat things other than hot dogs in these contests. Nick, you did 223 chicken wings in 10 minutes. And Mickey, you did 214. And I know, Nick, you did 50 hard-boiled eggs in 3 minutes and 2 seconds. What's the hardest thing to eat in this fashion?
Well, that's tough. I think that's person to person. We all kind of have our specialties. I would say for me, like technique foods or foods, even that a little bit more aggressiveness, like pork roll, pepperoni rolls, donuts, play a little bit better into my strengths. So something super tough for me that I haven't gotten to do yet would probably be ice cream. I don't know how well I would do with that. I'd probably get maybe some brain freeze or have a tough time, but I could say foods like that, almost like casseroles or ice creams. Miki's phenomenal at. She's got a few world records in foods of that consistency. The ice cream one probably being the most impressive with the 16 and a half pints in 6 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, like Nick mentioned, I'm really good at pasty foods. So if you had mashed potatoes, yogurt, cottage cheese, already he mentioned ice cream and casserole, that's where I really excel.
So do you even know whether it tastes good while you're eating this?
We're definitely aware at first, because typically we practice the foods if they're non-regional foods going in. But if you're tasting the food, you're probably not doing your job. Obviously, you're going to get the initial flavor and what have you, because some things are pretty strong, like pork roll or fudge or Spam, of course, or wings after 200 plus. But that said, you're not tasting it too much till afterwards. But yeah, we try to, I think you block the flavor out, not because some of these foods aren't delicious, but because if it is delicious, I don't want to sit there and chew on it and enjoy it because I've got money and a title on the line.
There's a thing that happens to people at dinners. You see this at Thanksgiving a lot, where it's not just that people feel stuffed, but they've eaten a lot of a particular thing. I think they call it flavor fatigue, where it's just, I could eat more, but I can't eat any more of that. But of course, that's the whole point of competitive eating. You have to eat a lot more of that. So is that a problem for you at any point? It's like, I got a little more room, but if I taste one more of whatever it is, 9 pounds of Spam, I just can't take any more of this.
With what you just said, I think it's really unfortunate if anybody's experiencing flavor fatigue at Thanksgiving with all the offerings that you have available to you. You're doing Thanksgiving wrong, first of all. But like you did mention, we do eat a lot of the same food repeatedly for 6 to 10 minutes. And that's why we use drink mixes, so flavored drinks to cut the flavor. For example, donuts are extremely sweet. So I'll have water available, but I'll also have coffee on hand to combat the sweetness when it's starting to get like too much. For Nathan's, for hot dogs, I have Nathan's are savory. I have a strawberry, orange, banana flavored drink mix handy. So that's how I combat flavor fatigue, but everybody's different.
So how do you train for this? Because it's not like you can just show up and, yeah, give me 80 hot dogs. I'll down that. I know I can do that. I mean, you've got to practice this, I take it.
I just roll out of bed and do it. No, in all seriousness, we practice like you play most of the time. So that'll be, for example, tomorrow I have a practice. So I'll cook up a certain amount of hot dogs and buns, plate them 5 to a plate, just like we all get in contest. You get your dunking liquids or your drinking liquids or whatever the case may be. You put the time on the clock and you try to, like, personally, I record my practices. Some people do, some people don't. Or you have somebody there motivating you, telling you maybe where your weaknesses are, where your strengths are. I'm not comparing what we do to like a big leaguer, hitting a baseball, throwing a pitch, what have you. There's a similar idea to dissecting what you're doing, because what we are trying to do is do something at a world-class level. Even if it is eating hot dogs and buns, there's money on the line, there's a title on the line. We're entertaining literally millions of people. When you're talking about the people at home, everybody wants to be the best in the world that given day. So I think the more details and intricacies you can pay attention to, the better.
Now, you two have had a child together since you became a couple, and that child's name is
Max.
People are going to hear that his name and go, wait, Max, not Nathan or Frank?
Oh, no. There are a few names that were off the table. I mean, I don't think we were really exploring Nathan or Frank, but...
Not that there's anything wrong with those names.
It's fine. It's just they weren't on the short list.
The 1 year that you took off, Mickey, because of your pregnancy, I just wondered how that went, because a lot of people, my wife included, during pregnancy, there were certain foods that they loved that they just couldn't stand the smell of, couldn't go near. That went away after giving birth, but and sometimes just after the first few months. But did you have any of that?
So I actually didn't stay away from Coney Island the year that I was pregnant. I got to serve as a guest commentator alongside Mike Golick Jr. and Rich Shea, because it just wouldn't be July 4th without hanging out at Coney Island. So I got to do, I thought that was the coolest experience. Sadly, one of my favorite foods, which is a kale and avocado salad that I make, I don't know, maybe like 4 times a week, that started to make me nauseous. But I did fall in love with habanero carrot hot sauces, and I love it to this day.
Yeah, to the point where I literally bought her a case a few months into the pregnancy. And before the pregnancy was even over, she went through more than the 12 bottles, which they unfortunately discontinued. But we've been finding replacements ever since for the past 3 years.
But when you people get ready for your practice runs and things, the people at the supermarket must think, wow, those Nick and Mickey, they must be having, family barbecues like every week.
Self-checkout. The secret is self-checkouts. So, when you're buying 60, 70 plus, or 2 of us are practicing, you're buying 120 hot dogs and buns, you go through self-checkout, and unless you want to, engage in the conversation about you're having a party for 2.
Got it. Listen, I wish you both the best. Nick, good luck on grabbing a championship. Mickey, wish you the best luck in defending yours. Nick, when you said earlier I could roll out of bed and do this, I'm thinking the day after, that's probably the only way you can get out of bed. But I thank you so much for being with us. And again, best of luck.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Stay right here for more of the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio.
Not to brag, but Progressive's Name Your Price tool is mankind's greatest tool ever. Even better than the wheel. Sure, without the wheel, we wouldn't have modern transportation or funny videos of dogs riding skateboards. But without the Name Your Price tool, we wouldn't have easy access to auto insurance options based on our budget. And, well, cars do need wheels. They also need insurance, and insurance never goes flat. Learn more about the greatest tool ever, the Name Your Price tool at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Do you hear that? Asthma triggers are everywhere, from dust mites, pet dander, and pollen, to smog and smoke. An asthma attack can strike anywhere, anytime. Be prepared with quick-acting Primatene Mist. Clinically proven to open airways quickly. It's the #1 FDA-approved asthma inhaler available over the counter. Primatene Mist. Breathe easy again. Use as directed.
Celebrate the 4th of July with the Great Lakes Loons. Join us on Thursday, July 4th for our 4th of July block party on Main, featuring America's Got Talent semifinalist Grace Good, Enjoy pre-game food trucks and live music, followed by a spectacular post-game fireworks loontacular, presented by Farm Bureau Insurance, culminating with the City of Midland's fireworks display. This isn't just baseball. It's the Great Lakes Loons, everyone's hometown team. For tickets, visit loons.com.
This has always been a farming community, and folks here, we want to keep it that way. There's a saying that a farmer's last crop is housing. When they get to the end of the farm's life, they sell it and develop it. With solar projects, that's one more crop they can harvest, generating a stable income for them and tax revenue for our community. We would hate to see this place become another suburbia, and this way we don't have to. A solar farm is still a farm, and that's what we want around here.
Fuel for Thought, presented by the American Clean Power Association.
My son loves to fly kites, but my active psoriatic arthritis can sometimes hold me back. Now with Skyrizi to treat my skin and joints, I'm ready to go. Skyrizi, risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults, helps with less joint pain, stiffness, swelling, and fatigue. For those who also have plaque psoriasis, 90% clearer skin is possible with just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
With Skyrizi, there's nothing like clearer skin and better movement, and that means everything. Ask your doctor about Skyrizi today and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKY-RIZI to learn more.
WSGW is your station for Sean Hannity. Politics, the economy, the culture of America. Conservative commentary and opinion. Weekday afternoons 3 to 6 on WSGW and online WSGW.com.
The Independence Day Special from CBS, presented by Pepsi.
Welcome back to the Independence Day Special, CBS News Radio. I'm Gil Gross. The American 4th of July is celebrated in a country other than the United States. Where do you think that is? No, but that's a good guess. 2 more. No, but I might have guessed that myself. All right, now you're just being silly, so I'll get right to the answer, which is Denmark. And joining us is somebody who took part in this overseas celebration of our independence, Elizabeth Buemiller, the Washington bureau chief for the New York Times. Good to have you with us. Before we get to your experience with this, where in Denmark is this?
Great to be here as well. It's just outside of Aalborg, Denmark, in Jutland, in a beautiful park, beautiful park of hills and greenery. And it's in the north of Jutland.
Yeah, and why is this thing going on there? And it's pretty big, which we'll get to in a moment, but why?
Well, it started about the beginning of the last century, about 1912. It was started by a Danish-American biochemist who he went from Aalborg and he settled in Chicago and founded the American Academy of Brewing in Chicago. Anyway, he was very successful and he loved America. And so he donated this parkland to the Danish government but said that his deal was that every 4th of July, there had to be a giant 4th of July celebration there of Danes and Americans. And that has been going on since then.
And it's been going on successfully all those years, Elizabeth, which is amazing. This is one of those provisions that people sometimes make when they make gifts or will that kind of, wear out after a few years and people forget about doing it. That is not the case. This is a huge celebration.
Yes, well, its biggest, its high water mark was, I believe, in the 60s or 70s when there were 50,000 Danes and Americans there. I spoke there last year, and it was just a miserable day of weather. It was cold and windy and wet. And I think there were probably 3,000 people there. Nonetheless, it was still a lot of people for the Danish celebration of the American 4th of July.
Absolutely. And it is the biggest celebration of American independence outside the United States. It's 3 days of events. I know this year the main speaker is the first non-American to pilot an American spacecraft, Andreas Mogensen, who flew to the International Space Station. But you spoke there last year. What did you speak about What was the reception like?
Well, yeah. Why did they ask me to speak? Correct. Yes, I spoke there because I was born in Aalborg, and I have my mother is Danish. She's now a naturalized American citizen. My father was American, but I spoke there because I had they were interested in hearing about my job as Washington bureau chief of the New York Times and how I was the bureau chief during the Trump administration, also during the Biden administration, and the last year of the Obama administration. But they were interested in hearing about that. But also they were interested in hearing about my Danish heritage and how I ended up in the United States when I was born in Aalborg. So I told them that was my story. And I was told ahead of time that they were interested in hearing about Donald Trump and Joe Biden, but they were particularly interested in hearing about my Danish roots. So that's what I mostly spoke about.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for being with us.
And thank you. It was a pleasure.
This has been the Independence Day Special from CBS News Radio, produced by District Productive and Paul Woody Woodhull with Hunter Sentz and Peter Ogberg. I'm Gil Gross.
Broadcasting from the Stormmaster Exterior Studios, WSGW, Saginaw, Bay City, Midland, WSGW FM, Carlton.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
I'm Peter King. President Biden admits he had a bad night during last week's debate, but it shouldn't erase his accomplishments in office. Appearing on the Earl Ingram Show on Civic Media in Wisconsin, Mr. Biden says he's staying in the race